Chapter 81, Moonberry. Inside, it was a breathtaking scene as she sat by the window, gazing outside absent-mindedly. Her beauty was truly something outside of this world. Even after visiting the academy, he hadn't found a single girl as beautiful as her. He stepped inside. "Hey, how have you been during the day?" he softly asked. She neither replied nor reacted, making him shake his head. He took a step closer and pulled a chair, sitting directly in front of her on the opposite side of the table. "You know, I went to the academy today and had to give this test to see my potential." He began talking to her idly, sharing some interesting things that happened during the day. The two of them sat in the room, one talking, the other listening in silence. From outside, the golden rays of the setting sun came through the window, enveloping the entire room in warm light. The peaceful atmosphere lasted a while longer as Orion simply continued to speak. He told her about the orb test, about Arya's awakening, and even poked fun at himself for being called an elemental freak by the students. Seraph said nothing, but she didn't turn away either. That was enough. And then the orb almost lit up the 9th ring. I don't know what would have happened if the 9th ring lit up. Maybe the dean herself would have come to see me, he finished with a chuckle, scratching his cheek. Still, silence. But her ears twitched. He caught that. Orion leaned back in his chair, gazing at her quietly for a moment. Her posture was graceful as always, with her long green hair falling loosely over her shoulders. There was a certain elegance to her, even now, when she was doing nothing but staring out at the sky. He exhaled softly and pulled open his inventory with a thought. But he made a gesture with his hand as if he was pulling something out of his storage ring. From inside, he brought out a small wooden tray holding 10 gently glowing, pale blue fruits. Moonberries. They shimmered faintly, as if infused with starlight, their sweet aroma subtly mixing into the air. "I asked around after I headed out this morning," Orion began, his voice softer than before, "to see what elves usually like to eat." CTHOvelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He gently nudged the tray toward her. "They told me moonberries are one of your favorites. So, I looked around the market for them. Wasn't easy, but I managed to find some." At that, she stirred ever so slightly. Her gaze flickered toward the tray for the briefest of moments before returning to the window. A nearly imperceptible motion, but to Orion it was the same as a full sentence. A small acknowledgement. He smiled faintly, not pressing further. "You don't have to eat them if you don't want to. Just thought you might like to have them nearby," he said casually, leaning back again. For a few more minutes, he continued talking. Not about the academy this time, but about random things. The look on Lucan's face when he exaggerated his compliments. The way Celine kept smiling at him today like she was planning something. He even made up a few stories, like a strange old woman in the market who tried to read his fortune with fish bones. It was peaceful. Eventually, the sun dropped below the horizon. He slowly stood up from his seat, pushing the chair back without making a sound. "I'll let you rest," he said, his voice quiet. "If you need anything, you can ask. You don't have to say anything. Just knock on my door." He turned to leave but paused at the door. His hand rested on the frame for a second. "Oh, and Seraph," he said without turning around, "never mind." And with that, he stepped out, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Inside, the room returned to silence. Seraph's eyes remained on the outside world, but her gaze had shifted ever so slightly, toward the tray of moonberries that now shimmered quietly in the fading light. But she soon turned her head back outside. "Master. Was this the reason you didn't give her the moonberries in the morning? So you could make up a bullshit reason?" "Sigma, degree. Lumi asked in a shocked voice. He inwardly chuckled. "It would have been weird if I gave her the moonberries the next morning after I brought her home. This is a delicate process, I need to be meticulous here." Umu, but you don't need to plan so much for her, right? You see, she already has trust issues. I don't want to step on her wrong nerve by accident. So I need to be extra careful about what I do. He inwardly shook his head. Then didn't you stay for too long chatting with her? Won't she get suspicious or something? He smiled, that's where you're wrong. I've already talked about my purpose and dream in front of her and those two. So she already knows why I'm trying to get closer to her. It'll only have a positive influence if I try harder. Human emotions are so complicated. Times. His lips twitched. I'm a dragon myself, ask me how hard it is to suppress my innate nature all the time. That's why you are my master. Cut above the rest of the peasants. How can normal people compare? He speechlessly stared at the system screen. I should now go and talk with Grandpa and Grandma, he said and began walking towards the dining room. Those two will be jealous as hell after they find out you spent the entire evening with Seraph and didn't even ask for them. His body paused in his tracks, lips slightly twitching. Fuck. I forgot about them due to the test and Seraph. Cooked. He really felt like cursing her. Where the hell are you learning these words? Guess? Of course, from my memories. He inwardly shook his head in exasperation. Anyways, I'll appease the two of them later. By the way, what did you mean to say to her at the end, when you said, never mind? She asked in confusion. Oh that? He inwardly smiled, nothing much, just left her some words so she'll keep wondering what I was about to say. So those were just empty words? You didn't mean anything with them? You're still far too young to understand the human heart. He smirked and ended the conversation. With that, he walked through the dimly lit hallways toward the dining hall where maids were preparing the table. That brat really talked with Seraph through the entire evening, huh? Eldrick said in a slightly amused voice. Celine giggled hearing his words, let him do as he wishes. We already checked the girl's background and she doesn't seem to be sent by one of our enemies. Eldrick stroked his beard, it would be fun if that's the case. The brat can get his one harsh real-life lesson from her. Celine's lips twitched, shut up, you old bastard. You want him to feel betrayed at such a young age? Your mother should have betrayed you and dumped you in some alleyway. Chapter 82, Golden Era. Eldrick speechlessly looked at her, I was just kidding. We already thoroughly checked the elf for any weird magic. I don't think there's any chance of her being a spy or anything. That's for the better, Celine nodded her head. Just then, the gate flung open and Orion entered with a cheerful smile on his face. Grandpa, Grandma, good evening. Eldrick and Celine turned their heads toward Orion. Finally got time for us? Eldrick smirked and asked. Celine, on the other hand, gently waved toward him, come and sit here, dear. The food is about to go cold. Orion smiled and sat down, grabbing a piece of roasted meat from the platter. Nothing beats home-cooked food after a long day. Celine chuckled gently. Of course. You need proper food now that you've started going to the academy. You'll need all the energy you can. Of course, and who would refuse such delicious food, he said with a grin. By the way, do you want to know about the academy test? Eldrick raised an eyebrow. How was it? You didn't burn the place down, did you? Nothing like that, Orion replied with a chuckle, then leaned back slightly as he began recounting the day. So, you know they measure affinities and mana channels with that orb, right? The two of them nodded their heads. So, I decided to show 4 of my affinities publicly. Wait, Eldrick cut him off mid-sentence and frowned his brows. Why did you show 4 affinities? Didn't we agree on 2? Celine also looked at him worriedly. Orion chuckled, I'll get to that in a bit. So where was I? Ah yes, 4 affinities. So after I showed them my affinities, I'm pretty sure over half the students looked at me as if I'm a monster. While the teachers were losing their minds. Eldrick and Celine decided to ask his reasons later and listened attentively. Well no shit, of course they'd lose their minds, Eldrick's lips twitched. No one in the history of this country has been able to awaken 4 elements. Celine gently shook her head, you gave them too big of a surprise. Haha, I'm sure the dean must have been quite shocked as well. Eldrick, however, chuckled at something else. He shrugged. They gave me a title as well. Elemental freak. Not official, of course. Just student gossip that I heard while walking around. Eldrick burst out laughing. That's one for the books. Celine covered her mouth, giggling softly. But, Orion added, narrowing his eyes a little, you two could have given me a heads up that Arya would be there. Eldrick smirked and shrugged. And ruin the surprise? Nah. Your expressions are way more fun when you're blindsided. Celine nodded as she sipped her tea. We thought it would be a good opportunity, letting you two meet again without preparation. Genuine reactions matter, especially at your age. He rolled his eyes. TCH royals and their surprises. You're one to talk, Eldrick snorted. Didn't you bring a half-dead elf home without telling anyone? Fair enough, Orion mumbled, stuffing his mouth with rice. Now, lad, tell me why you decided to show them 4 of your affinities? Eldrick put down his teacup and seriously asked. Oh yeah, Grandpa. You said dual affinity geniuses are rare. But I found them all over the place. Like, you randomly throw a mana crystal and it'll have a good chance of landing on a dual affinity awakener. Eldrick raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you aren't exaggerating, lad? Even if it's the most prestigious academy in the kingdom, dual affinity users are no joke. How can there be so many? He spread his hands. Well, you can ask Uncle Edgar. Eldrick and Celine's expressions turned serious. Eldrick's voice turned solemn. Is the golden era coming again? Orion raised an eyebrow. Golden era? Again? What do you mean, Grandpa? This is bad, this is bad. Why now? Why now of all times? He muttered as if he didn't hear Orion's words. Celine took a deep breath and turned to Orion. Listen to what I'm about to say clearly, dear. It's important for your future. The Golden Era, or as some call it, the Age of Geniuses, is a bloody period that comes once every 1,000 or tens of thousands of years. We don't know what triggers it or how long it will last, but during this time, there will be geniuses all over the place and the world will prosper. Orion tilted his head. Then isn't this good news? Why is Grandpa reacting like that? She took a deep breath, because the Golden Era is not only for us, but for the demons as well. Orion's eyes widened slightly at her words. She continued, they will become far too active in some time. And from that, endless wars will happen all over the place. Her eyes became filled with pity. Countless people of all races will die while the geniuses rise. Celine shook her head. Individuals revere this period while kingdoms and empires dread it. So many giant powers have fallen throughout long history. Orion leaned back slightly in his chair, brows furrowed. So it's like a double-edged sword. Talent rises, but so does chaos? Eldrick nodded, face unusually grim. Exactly. The stronger the era's talents, the more brutal the conflicts that follow. Empires rise and fall in the blink of an eye during a golden era. What you saw at the academy today? That's just the beginning. Orion thought of something and asked, so are we facing the demons under the 72 demon kings? Or will there be other races? Eldrick shook his grim head. If it were only the demons under the 72 demon kings, then we might have somehow managed, as they are usually spread out all over the place. However, there are other factions. Collectively we call them dark creatures. The 72 demons are but a single faction. There are a few more powerful ones and dozens of other smaller ones. Orion's expression turned serious. Which are the strongest factions among them? Eldrick took a deep breath and began recounting. 72 Demon Kings is a top-notch faction. Then comes the Succubi under the lead of Mother of Chaos, Lilith. The third faction is of vampires under the leadership of Dracula. Then, the progenitor of undead, the first Lich, we don't know their name. And more. I can't be sure of all of them. He frowned his brows. This is troublesome. He tapped his fingers on the table, processing their words. Then what about me? What should I be doing? You don't need to change anything, Celine said gently, placing her hand over his. Just remember, every move you make, every step forward, you will be watched by the masses. Some will admire you. Others will envy you. And many will want you dead. Orion chuckled dryly. Huh. Sounds fun. Eldrick looked at him seriously. You should head to bed now. I need to verify the information you gave me. I'll be back later. With that, he stood up and left the dining hall. Search the novel, ir.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Celine stood up and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. You don't need to worry too much. If something happens, we'll be sure to protect you. Orion gently smiled and nodded his head without saying anything. Chapter 83, Learning How to Lead. After everyone left, he sat there speechlessly. Does this have to happen when I just came to this world? Is the world fucking with me? You don't have to worry, Master. With me by your side, no trouble will be unsurpassable. And that worries me the most, he said with a twitch of his lips. No. I'm not useless. Degree. Ding. New quest triggered. cthnellfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Learning how to lead. Description: handle the situation with Rina and Fiora without using your authority as their master. Reward: 100 SP. Time limit: 1 week. Orion speechlessly stared at the quest window in front of him. You can really issue quests at will, huh? Humph. Of course. I am limitless first before Lumi. Carrot. He exhaled a long breath. Looks like I can really wade these muddy waters with you. He praise me more. So easy, he inwardly thought before saying with a soft smile to her, yes, you are the best. I don't know what I'd be doing if not for you. Why don't you give me a few more quests? My current limit is only 1 quest at a time. He nodded his head, understanding that the ability to give him quests at all was already busted. Alright, reasonable enough. Let's go and meet with the 2 of them now. He stood up as the maids cleaned up the dining table. Exiting the dining hall, he stepped back into the now dimly lit hall as he made his way back to his room. Outside his room, he saw Fiora and Rina standing as usual. However, something was amiss. Rina was looking in the other direction, pouting, while Fiora looked at Orion with an apologetic smile, as if pleading for Rina. Orion exhaled a sigh. Well, let's talk inside the room. Rina turned her head back and slightly bowed. It's your bedtime, young master, maybe we should too. Ow. Before she could say anything more, Orion lightly hit her head. Enough nonsense, come inside. She grabbed her head and looked at him with accusing eyes. Fiora, on the other hand, slightly giggled and softly grabbed her hand and led her inside with Orion. Once inside, Orion closed the gate and looked at the 2 of them. Fiora blushed, looking at the intense stare of Orion, while Rina looked him straight in the eye. Alright, why all the fuss? He lightly asked as he gently pushed both of them onto chairs and sat down. You seem angry with me? No, young master, how can I be angry with you? Fiora quickly waved her hands and denied it. However, despite her saying this, she couldn't hide the flicker of jealousy and slight resentment toward him. Rina quickly nodded along. How can we dare to be angry with you, young master? Orion's lips twitched, looking at them acting like this. Is it about Seraph? Both of their eyes twitched, but neither said anything. They didn't want to tell him that they were jealous of a new girl who just entered the mansion and was being showered with their young master's love and care. But Orion clearly caught their reactions. You 2 are really a handful. Both of them turned their heads to the side. After all, they couldn't just control their emotions. Listen here now, he sternly said, making them both turn their heads and sit up straighter. You 2 are irreplaceable to me, no matter what. Both of them blushed intensely at his words, their faces burning up brightly. However, Seraph is in a special condition now. We need to be more considerate of her. You two already know me well enough that I won't just forget about you. So what are you even worried about? He looked at them and asked. In the time I spent in the library, we used to read and discuss together all the time. It's nothing unusual for us to sit there chatting for hours on end. Rena slowly calmed down, her face showing clear hesitation as she gathered her courage and spoke clearly. I fear you might leave us behind, young master. It's not about your character but our inability to catch up with you. That's why we reacted like this. Toward the end of her words, she lowered her head in guilt and embarrassment. Orion raised his eyebrow. What are you talking about? WEH heard ABO about what happened at the T-test, Fiora stutteringly said, feeling invisible pressure radiating from Orion's body as he stared at the two of them. Huh? Orion looked at her in confusion. How? Did the news travel that fast? She took a deep breath to take hold of her emotions. Why yes, he heard about the RU rumors during the day. Rena placed her hand on top of hers to reassure her as she took over. After hearing those rumors, we went to meet with Sir Edgar. And he told us what happened. He rubbed his chin. Looks like Uncle Edgar asked around about what happened during the test. Huh, so that's why you two were worried? That I will leave you behind after you learned about my talent? He slapped his forehead and asked in disappointment. Fiora and Rena's bodies shuddered, clearly hearing the disappointment in his voice. They feared he was disappointed in their meager talent. However, they couldn't lie in front of him and deny that they were thinking this, but they also didn't want him to be disappointed in their talent and leave them. Fiora felt something choking her throat, and no, nothing like that. Rena drew a shaky breath, and no, it's no dash. I'm not disappointed in your talent, but disappointed at how you look at me. Do you really think I would leave you behind just because of your talent? He shook his head and stood up from his chair. Walking forward, he reached in front of them and leaned forward. As I have said before again and again, you two are irreplaceable to me. I won't leave you behind, no matter what. And then he hugged them both. Both of their bodies paused. Their eyes filled with tears as they silently sobbed on his shoulder. Orion gently smiled and caressed their backs. Both of them had been with him since the day he arrived in this world. He wouldn't leave them behind no matter what. These two are really a handful, he said with a soft smile on his face, feeling his shoulder becoming hot with their tears. I want a hug too. Subset of? No. He directly refused. You hug them but not me. Discrimination. Alright, come here. Let me give you a hug, he inwardly smirked and said. One day. I will be sure to take this hug. Ding. Quest completed. You have successfully resolved the conflict with both of your companions without relying on your authority as their master. Reward, plus 100 SP awarded. No bonus this time, he asked. No, underscore. His lips twitched, looking at the system screen in front of him. He decided to deal with her later and focused on the two on his shoulder first. They had stopped crying by now as they silently lay on his shoulder, savoring this moment to the fullest. Chapter 84, 30 Draws. Have you both calmed down now? He softly asked. They nodded their heads, but neither wanted to leave his embrace. He helplessly smiled and patted their backs softly. So, from now on, do not think that I will abandon you just because I got busy with some work. Understand? They nodded their heads and slowly left his embrace. Their faces looked reluctant but they knew they couldn't stay there forever. Orion looked at them with a gentle smile. Reaching out with his hand, he caressed their cheeks and wiped off their tears. See, you two look so cute without tears. No need to cry now, alright, he chuckled and said. Both of them finally cracked a smile on their tear-stricken faces. They continued to chat for a while longer before the two of them bid him good night and left. He went to his bed and dropped down in exhaustion. That was tiring. Didn't expect so much to happen in one day. You did great today, Master. He softly smiled. You helped me out a bunch as well with those quests. Thanks. Not even a single second passed before he said those words, a notification popped up in front of him. Ding. New quest triggered. Sir, the novelfire.net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Beginning of a legend. Description: form your first affinity rune successfully. Reward: 100 SP. Time limit: 1 week. He speechlessly stared at the screen ahead. You. // Orion couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha ha ha, you are the best, Lumi. He, anything for master. Alright then, since I got 300 SP, it's that time again, he said with a slightly excited voice. You sure you don't want to save those points for later? You seem to spend all your points as soon as you get them. Orion waved his hand. I can get more points later. Nothing wrong with trying to gain treasures. Who knows, I might get a legacy of a great mage. That's the spirit. Alright, master, initiating gambling interface. Asterisk. Ding. Total available SP, 307. Draw cost, 10 SP per pull. Total pulls available, 30. Begin draws? Yes, he said, sitting up straight and cracking his knuckles as he stretched slightly. Let's see what fate has for me this time. Wait. Wait. We need the gotcha blessing BGM. Suddenly, a vivid orchestral tune echoed through his sea of consciousness, a dramatic, adventure fantasy soundtrack with trumpets, rising drums, and mysterious chanting in the background. What the hell is this budget anime opening? He muttered. It's premium music, thank you very much. Now, let the draws begin. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Ding. Initiating 30 consecutive draws. Buckle up, master. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to, /. Draw 1, common grade, tier 4, Emberwolf cloak. A fire-infused cloak that reduces fire damage and slightly increases resistance to heat. Huh. Nice start, now as long as I don't open an empty draw. He rubbed his palms together and said. Draw 2, empty. Okay, just warming up. Draw 3, common grade, tier 5, Wind's Hard pendant. Pendant that improves casting speed for wind-type spells. Looks pretty, too bad Fiora and Rena don't have wind affinity. Draw 4, common grade, tier 6, steel root bracers. Bracers made of magically treated roots. Enhances endurance and slightly boosts earth affinity. Huh. Tanky stuff. Not for me though. Draw 5, empty. WL. RNG-sama needs some warm-up time too. Asterisk. Draw 6, common grade, tier 3, beastbone arrow set. A quiver of 20 arrows made from enchanted beastbone. Slightly more effective against monsters. Perfect for me. I can pair those with my Thunderstrike bow from earlier. Nice. Draw 7, common grade, tier 9, Azure Ice Rune Scroll. A single-use scroll that freezes a 1,000 meter radius. Holy shit. A true trump card. His eyes lit up in excitement as he saw the scroll of mass destruction in front of him. Draw 8, empty. Was my luck too good? Draw 9, common grade, tier 7, Runestone Hammer, crafting tool. A tool specifically designed to aid in carving runes into weapons and artifacts. Okay, now we're talking. Might help with rune practice. Draw 10, uncommon grade, Shadow Veil Band. A slim black ring that allows brief invisibility in darkness. Orion raised an eyebrow. This is the second stealth item, and an uncommon grade at that. Should I form a Shadow Legion or something? Draw 11, common grade, tier 8, Elixir of Mental Clarity. A rare potion that temporarily improves focus and increases spirit-related comprehension. Useful for affinity rune formation? Draw 12, empty. Yuck. RNG-sama, you traitor. Don't worry, we've been doing good so far. Let's continue. Draw 13, common grade, tier 4, Gale Grip Gloves. Lightweight gloves enhancing hand speed and wind control. Okay, wind gear again. Are the draws trying to tell me something? But these are useful for me. Draw 14, empty. Continue. Draw 15, common grade, tier 6, etherweave robes. Robes with light mana insulation, slightly boosting spell defense. Alright, finally we talking. Decent market value, I believe. Draw 16, common grade, tier 5, beast lore flute. A mystical flute that lures nearby spirit beasts of tier 1 to 5. Now that's risky, but it might come in handy in special situations. Draw 17, empty. Draw 18, empty. Back-to-back blanks? You testing me, Lumi? It's not me. It's the mysterious forces of fate. Winky face. Draw 19, common grade, tier 8, crystal watch compass. A magical compass that always points toward the nearest mana-rich zone. Exploration tool, can be useful. Draw 20, uncommon grade, Emberflame Grimoire. An advanced fire element spellbook containing techniques up to exalted grade. Orion's eyes lit up. Damn, I actually got a legacy. Hee, I told you. Gotcha, God has blessed you. Good, good. It might not be an all-encompassing legacy, but it's good enough. Though, what is exalted rank? Is it one of the ranks above tier 9? He rubbed his chin while guessing. We'll know once we reach there, master. Draw 21, empty. Draw 22, common grade, tier 3, lesser storage ring. A simple ring with minimal storage space. I may give this to Rena or Fiora, depending on which pleases me more, he thought to himself with a smile. Perv. Eyes closed face. Cough, continue. Draw 23, common grade, tier 5, Viper's Venom Vial. A rare poison that can paralyze foes under tier 6. Nice. Might help when I deal with assholes or somewhere else. Draw 24, empty. Draw 25, common grade, tier 6, Binding Chains of Elgar. Enchanted chains that restrain enemies and nullify magic up to tier 5. Damn, is this what the police here use? Draw 26, common grade, tier 4, Echoing Horn of Rally. Boosts allies' morale and minor regeneration when blown in battle. Perfect war weapon. Is fate telling me to prepare myself? He speechlessly stared at the screen. Draw 27, empty. Draw 28, common grade, tier 7, spirit-imbued lens. Used for detecting mana signatures and minor illusions. A scout tool, Draw 29, common grade, tier 6, Thundersteel Shard, material. A rare metal required for forging thunder affinity weapons. Another practice material. Now for the final draw. He leaned forward slightly in anticipation. Draw 30, empty. Cough, let me tally what you got, master. Draw summary, session complete. Total pulls, 30. Empty draws, 10. Common grade treasures, 18. Uncommon grade treasures, 2. Master, it's not the best draw session we've had, but at least you didn't get all empty. Orion chuckled. Honestly? That Grimoire and Shadow Veil band make up for the rest. You gonna say I'm awesome or what? Yeah. You did good. But the empty rate actually increased this time. It was over 30%. I think the value of SP you get from various ways is different. Oh? How so? Chapter 85, Emberflame Grimoire, In my opinion, the fate-related quest sequence gives the best SP, with nearly no chance of an empty draw. Then the random quests I give, which have around a 30% chance of an empty draw. Then at last, the SP you get from mana crystals, I don't have an exact estimate for that. Orion nodded his head, alright, good enough for me. I can work with that. He lay back down on his bed and closed his eyes for a second. Moonlight gently filtered through the silk curtains, casting a silvery light that bathed the room in a soft glow of midnight blue. Orion stared silently at the ceiling, smiling softly to himself as he felt the comforting presence of the moonlight. Today was interesting, he murmured quietly, breaking the peaceful silence. You handled it quite well, Master. Not gonna lie, even I was impressed. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. You're too easy to impress, Lumi, Orion chuckled softly. Humph. It's just because Master is that impressive. He smilingly shook his head lightly, letting the comforting silence envelope him for a brief moment before remembering something crucial. All right, the Emberflame Grimoire. Let me check it out quickly. He reached out, activating his spatial ring, his fingers brushing gently against the cool metal. Ah, Master. Your inventory was full, so I placed all the new treasures inside your spatial ring. Orion nodded his head, his inventory was already full during the last draw. Lumi, you're truly thoughtful. What would I do without you, he playfully said. You'd probably have lost all your treasures already. Orion chuckled again, pulling out the Emberflame Grimoire. Its dark crimson cover shimmered faintly under the moonlight, adorned with intricate golden flames that flickered softly in response to his mana. It's about time I learn how to properly create my fire rune, he said excitedly, opening the grimoire carefully. The smell of ancient pages and subtle fire filled his senses, making his heart quicken with anticipation. He flipped through the first few pages, eyes scanning eagerly, but soon his excitement faltered slightly. The grimoire was filled with profound insights about the essence of fire, detailed explanations on how fire formed, the myriad forms it could take, its elemental nature, and numerous fire-based spells, from the simplest ignition to high-tier infernos, but there was no explicit mention of the rune creation process. Eh? Lumi, there's no explanation about rune creation here, Orion said with a slight frown. Perhaps the author thought the rune creation process itself wasn't important enough to include. Maybe he assumed that users already knew it or could learn it elsewhere. Instead, he seems to have prioritized sharing his deep understanding of the fire element and powerful spell techniques. Orion sighed in exasperation, slumping slightly into his pillow. Great, I was hoping to finally get some guidance on rune formation. It's all right, Master. Knowing the true essence of an element is also vital. Maybe understanding fire deeply will naturally help you form your fire rune. Orion nodded slowly, conceding, I suppose it won't hurt to deepen my comprehension. Might as well read a bit before sleeping. He returned to the beginning, this time reading carefully. The author's insight captivated him almost instantly. The detailed explanation of fire was profound, far beyond anything Orion had ever learned in both his lives. The author of this book was truly someone with profound knowledge, he thoroughly explained the essence of fire. He absent-mindedly muttered while continuing to flip pages. As he continued, the book described fire not just as heat or destruction, but as transformation, as passion and life itself, telling how all civilization began with a flicker of ember. It detailed mystical flames, magical combustions, and the subtle weaving of mana within every flame. Unknowingly, Orion became deeply engrossed in his reading, turning pages slowly as his mind was filled with insights and understanding. cthnafire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Ahem, Master? I don't want to interrupt your profound study, but you really should sleep soon. Tomorrow's another big day. Orion blinked in surprise, startled out of his trance. He glanced outside, the moon had traveled significantly, marking the late hour clearly. You're right, Lumi, he yawned softly, reluctantly closing the grimoire. But this book, it's incredible. My understanding of fire is already far deeper. I feel like I can form the fire rune without any guidance now. But will you try to form the fire rune now? Orion smirked, of course, not. He wryly chuckled, I don't want to endanger myself like that again. I'll just go to the academy and learn the basics first. Then I'll try to form it again. Good, looks like Master really learned from his mistakes. Anyway, this book is really good. Now I can't help but Want to gamble more so I can get more such books for different elements. He licked his lips, thinking about gaining various elemental books. Hee, I knew Master would like it. However, getting various element books won't be easy. And one as high level as this would be even more difficult. From what I've gathered, there's less than a 10% chance of getting an uncommon grade treasure. He lightly stretched and put the book back inside his storage ring. Well, whatever. I'll think about it when the time comes. It's time for some beauty sleep. Sleep well. You deserve a good rest. Orion smiled gently and closed his eyes, quickly falling into the land of dreams as the moonlight continued to softly illuminate the room. Orion groggily woke up and lazily stretched his body inside his bed. I really can't get used to waking up in such a luxurious bed, he sighed and said, slowly waking up. Knock knock. Young master, it's time to wake up. Rena's energetic voice came from outside. He softly smiled. Well, looks like they're all good now after yesterday. How can they not be? After you let them cry on your shoulders like some bullied young maidens. Looking towards the gate, he smilingly shook his head and said, Come in. The door gently opened as Rena and Fiora stepped inside, smiling warmly at Orion. Rena was clearly more energetic, her smile bright as the morning sun, while Fiora shyly stood behind her, offering a gentle smile and a slight nod. Good morning, master. Did you sleep well? Rena chirped, stepping forward confidently. Good morning, Fiora echoed softly, her voice warm and gentle. Orion stretched once more, smiling gently back at them. Morning. Yeah, I had a great sleep. I feel refreshed. Rena giggled and nodded approvingly. That's good. You should always sleep well. Otherwise, how can you become the legendary mage you're destined to be? Orion chuckled, shaking his head slightly. Legendary mage? You're exaggerating again. And no. Master is amazing. Fiora quickly said, her voice earnest despite her shyness. You will surely become legendary. Orion helplessly shook his head. Are they saying this due to my test result yesterday? Still, he smiled warmly, appreciating their faith in him. All right, if you two say so. Rena stepped forward energetically, gently pulling at his arm. Now, it's time for your bath, master. You can't keep everyone waiting for breakfast. Orion stood up, stretching lazily once more before nodding in agreement. All right. Let's go. After a refreshing bath, Orion walked leisurely through the elegant hallways toward the dining room together with Fiora and Rena. Sunlight poured through the tall, intricate windows, illuminating the luxurious interior. The trio chatted lightly, their voices soft echoes in the wide corridor. So, master, what are your plans today? Rena asked curiously, turning her bright eyes toward Orion. He smiled thoughtfully. I'm going to spend some time talking with Seraph. I want to see if she ate her food yet or not. She really worries me. Fiora nodded gently. You're always so thoughtful, young master. I'm sure she'll appreciate it. Orion chuckled softly. I hope so. She's had a rough time. They arrived at the dining room, greeted warmly by Eldrick and Celine. The breakfast passed swiftly, filled with pleasant conversation and laughter, making Orion feel truly at home. If only I had such a good family in my past life, then maybe I might still have some attachments to that place. He shook his head and continued chatting with Eldrick and Celine. After breakfast, Orion returned to his room, comfortably sitting down on his bed as Lumi's voice chimed in his head. Are you going to check on Seraph now, master? Yeah, he replied softly, stretching slightly. But first, what do you think of her situation? What else can I think, master? She is destined to lead you towards your destiny, or at least give you a hint to what that is. As for her personally, I can't really tell. Her affinity is hidden, while her origins are unclear. It's intriguing to say the least, but she seems harmless enough. Orion nodded slowly, thoughtful. Yeah, I feel the same. I need to at least treat her well enough that she learns to trust me. You're truly calculating, Master. But be careful not to neglect Fiora and Rena. He laughed softly. Don't worry. I already took care of that yesterday. Standing up, he approached the door, stepping out where Fiora and Rena waited. I'm going to speak with Seraph for a bit. You two take a break. All right, young master, Rena said, smiling warmly. We'll be here if you need anything. Fiora gently nodded, her gaze soft and supportive. See? They are now fully supporting me, he inwardly smirked and said. Lumi felt her lips twitching. Poor girls are dancing on your fingertips. He smilingly shook his head and headed toward Seraph's room. Chapter 86, Nytherion. Once again, he gently knocked on the door but didn't get any reply from her side. He softly sighed, It's me, Seraph. I'm entering. He softly opened the gate and entered inside to see her still sitting at the table beside the window, gazing at the morning sun. However, at his entry, her face turned slightly toward him. He moved his gaze toward the table to see the moonberries still placed there. She hadn't eaten any of them and had just kept them there. He heaved a sigh and moved toward her. You will become skin and bones if you don't eat properly. While saying this, he picked up the moonberry plate and placed it beside the gate to take it out while exiting, and replaced it with a fresh plate of moonberries that he had prepared. Eat these fresh ones whenever you feel up to it, he said gently, his voice warm and comforting. She neither said anything nor moved a little. Sar the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion's lips twitched a little seeing her not even react. Are we back to square one? He sighed and took a seat near her. You know, I found something quite interesting yesterday, a grimoire. It's filled with incredible knowledge about fire magic. Slowly, Orion began to share details from the Emberflame grimoire, its profound insights into the essence and nature of fire, the philosophy hidden within flames, and the powerful spells it contained. Since he didn't have anything new to share, he just decided to share what he had learned from the grimoire. And as he spoke, his voice became animated, passionate, and alive, completely engrossed in the knowledge he'd gained. Seraph listened silently without changing her expression. However, her eyes held a faint, almost imperceptible spark, a subtle sign that she was genuinely listening to his words. It's fascinating, Orion concluded after a long explanation, leaning back slightly in the chair, his eyes filled with enthusiasm. I've never read something so profound about an element before. Seraph continued to absent-mindedly look toward him. Orion smiled gently, maybe once you're feeling better, we could read it together. He continued talking about the things he had discussed with her grandmother during the morning as they continued to stay inside the room. Eventually, Orion stood up and stretched lightly. Anyway, make sure to eat these moonberries this time, he said gently before turning around. They're rare, so don't waste them. She gave a faint nod, barely perceptible, yet more than she had ever given before. But Orion didn't see it, already walking away. Rest well, Seraph, he said as he walked toward the exit. I'll see you again later. He picked up the old plate and exited the room, leaving Seraph staring at the moonberries on her plate. He walked toward his room with the moonberries in his hand. He picked one up and threw it in his mouth. Does the storage ring keep these fresh? He wondered, noticing the taste had changed since the last time he ate them. Not the storage ring but the inventory, Master. Moonberries are placed inside the inventory, which keeps them fresh. Ah, I see. So that's why the taste changed. They're still good but way off from their original taste. Master, what are you eating? Rena curiously asked, seeing him walking back with a plate. Orion showed them the plate. Moonberries. Both Fiora and Rena's eyes widened in disbelief. Fiora quickly said, Master, spit it out. Those are poisonous. Why are you eating poison? Rena asked worriedly and tried to take the plate from his hand. Orion quickly put the plate in his storage ring. Calm down, calm down. I already ate the antidote before eating them. It's easy to buy, he tried to calm them down. Fiora grabbed his hand and tried to check his temperature if he was okay or not, while Rena placed her hand on his forehead and said, "But why the hell are you eating poison directly? It's only good for elves. Humans would only get poisoned if they eat it." Orion heaved an exasperated sigh. Alright, I'm fine now and need to do some work. I'll be in my room if someone asks." "Master." Before the two of them could follow up with questions, he quickly escaped from them and entered his room. "Hee, why are you giving those two such many heart attacks? Those poor souls don't deserve it." Orion chuckled and shook his head. "I need to train them from the start. I might do even more absurd things in the future, so they can be better prepared from the start." He dropped onto the bed while saying that and took out the grimoire again. "What do you have in mind for those poor girls, Master?" "Sigma, degree. Orion chuckled and shook his head. "What are you even thinking about?" "I don't have anything planned. It's just, I can't be sure what the future has in store for me. I need to prepare the people beside me to be ready for anything. Anyway, let me read this book. I'm free all day long anyway. I don't have academy or any other work. Might as well try to finish this book," he said before returning to the page he had read yesterday. "You are only on the 4th page, Master. You might need a lifetime to finish this book at this rate. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to." His grip on the book tightened while his lips twitched. "It's due to my damn low level. I'd be reading it a lot faster if I was a tier 5 or something awakener," he said out loud in frustration. "Why are you in such a hurry, Master? It's only been like a little over 2 months since you were born." "Yes, but I won't have thousands of years to reach my peak as a dragon and roam the myriad worlds freely. I need to speed up the process one way or another. And leveling up as a mage seems to be the fastest path." He sighed and decided to focus on the book. Lumi decided to stay quiet and let him focus on the book. Far away from the prosperous lands of Zarathil, beneath darkened skies eternally eclipsed by thick, roiling clouds of smoke and ash, lay a vast and desolate continent ruled solely by chaos and brutality, the continent of Nytherion. Once a lush and vibrant place, Nytherion was now a forsaken land, twisted and corrupted by the unending dominion of demons. Across this accursed land, grotesque and monstrous demons of every shape and size roamed freely. Violent clashes broke out ceaselessly, the shrieks and roars of battle echoing through the valleys and over the scorched mountains. Rivers ran red, blue, green, etc., with various types of blood, littered with the mangled remains of defeated creatures. Flames erupted spontaneously from fissures in the charred earth, illuminating the grim landscape with an eerie, sinister glow. Amidst the relentless turmoil stood the colossal obsidian fortress of Viper, one of the 72 demon kings and undisputed ruler of Nytherion. Towering over the devastated continent, the fortress was adorned with countless sharp spires and grotesque carvings depicting scenes of anguish and torment. Inside, Viper reclined lazily upon her obsidian throne, her fierce crimson eyes narrowed in contemplation. Chapter 87. Boardlong dark hair cascaded like a waterfall of shadow around her elegant yet deadly figure, and her presence alone exuded an oppressive aura that could crush weaker beings into oblivion. Her slender fingers tapped impatiently on the armrest, the sharp claws clicking rhythmically as she awaited news from her subordinates. At her feet knelt several demon generals, each clad in dark, twisted armor that pulsed faintly with an ominous red glow. "Have you discovered the source of that anomaly yet?" Viper's voice was chillingly calm, yet filled with a barely restrained fury. "I felt a disturbance from Zarathil. A ripple, subtle yet unmistakable." The nearest demon general, a towering figure with crimson scales and twisted horns, spoke carefully. "My queen, our scouts have returned from Zarathil. The only anomaly they were able to identify originates from within the Titan race. However, the specifics remain elusive. Their security has tightened significantly, and extracting information has become far more challenging." Viper's eyes flashed dangerously, a faint smile playing at her lips. "The Titans, Now this has become interesting. What is one of the apex races planning here? Continue investigating. I want every detail uncovered. I will not tolerate interference at this stage. Yes, my queen, the generals responded in unison, their voices echoing with unwavering loyalty. Do not fail me, Deeper warned softly, her voice dripping with bloodlust, or your fate shall become an example to all. As the general swiftly retreated from her throne room, Deeper's gaze drifted toward the distant horizon, her expression darkening. Around her fortress, the unending battles surged, demons ripping one another apart in mindless savagery, driven by insatiable bloodlust. Flames consumed entire regions, and cries of suffering filled the air, a grotesque symphony that only fueled Viper's ambitions. Soon, she whispered, eyes narrowing in anticipation. Soon, all worlds will know true chaos. The war is coming. Her laughter echoed chillingly through the fortress, making even the demons within shiver with fear. Orion stretched after getting up from the bed. Looking at the time, it was already evening. His lips twitched as he saw the book placed on the side table of the bed. How the hell did I only manage to read 4 more pages in the entire day when I managed to read 4 yesterday night? Because the book's contents are becoming more profound. So you will either need to become stronger or spend more time. But it's already impressive you managed to read 8 pages in 2 days. I fear other humans wouldn't even be able to read a single page in a week of this grimoire. Orion shook his head and headed out. I'll just walk around the garden, this shit is depressing me. Pushing open the gates, he saw both Fiora and Rena standing outside, waiting for any order. Let's go and have a walk in the garden, he smiled at them and said. The day continued to pass as he spent time all over the mansion, chatting and laughing with Rena and Fiora, or spending time reading. He decided against visiting Seraph, as he thought visiting her too many times a day might make him seem too pushy and leave a bad impression. Exhausted, he went back to his room after having dinner. He dropped back on the bed. Why is my life so boring? I thought it would be fun in a fantasy world. Because you are weak as fuck, master. Come here, let me beat you up, he said, annoyed. Cough, but what I said is true, master. You are only like this because you haven't become strong yet. Otherwise, you would consider even sleeping a waste. Once you reach tier 1, you'll have so many things to do, like learning spirit arts, runesmithing, herb growing, potion brewing, spell learning, etc. etc. You won't ever be bored. Orion silently looked at the system screen, reading her message as he inwardly agreed. Maybe you're right. I should try to hurry it up. But I don't want to rush it like last time either. A few days won't make that big of a difference, master. You just need to let nature take its course. Fuck this. I'm sleeping early, he said before turning around and slipping inside his blanket. Warm sunlight gently cascaded through the windows as Orion stirred awake the next morning, stretching lazily beneath his comfortable sheets. A quiet knock came at his door, followed by Rena's cheerful voice. Young master, it's morning. Time to get up. Come in, Orion replied, sitting up and rubbing his sleepy eyes. The door opened softly, and Rena stepped inside along with Fiora, both smiling warmly. Rena approached and gently straightened Orion's messy hair. Did you sleep well, master? Quite well, thanks to yesterday's rest, he smiled back, feeling a warm sense of calm seeing their cheerful faces. Let's get you ready then, master, Fiora said shyly, holding fresh clothes in her arms. Orion nodded, allowing them to guide him to the bathing chamber, where they helped him bathe, the warm water washing away any lingering fatigue. After dressing in comfortable robes, he made his way to the dining hall accompanied by Fiora and Rena. The corridor was illuminated by the morning sun, brightening the entire atmosphere. They chatted casually, Orion laughing lightly at their talks. Breakfast was simple yet delicious, giving Orion a comforting start to his day. Soon after finishing, he stood up. I'll go check on Seraph. Let me know if Grandma or Grandpa need anything. Understood, young master, Rena and Fiora replied warmly, bowing their heads gently as he left. Orion walked calmly down the corridor, carrying a small plate of fresh moonberries. Approaching Seraph's room, he knocked gently once more. Seraph, I'm coming in, he said softly, slowly opening the door. Inside, Seraph sat in her usual position by the window, the morning sunlight illuminating her emerald hair and pale skin, making her appear even more ethereal. Orion's gaze shifted toward the table, and his eyes widened slightly in pleasant surprise. The moonberries he'd left her yesterday were completely gone. A gentle smile spread across his face as he placed the new plate of moonberries down before her. You finally ate them, huh? Good girl, he said warmly, his voice soft and filled with genuine care. Sitting across from her, Orion observed her silently for a moment before continuing, you must have enjoyed them, right? They're pretty rare, you know. Not easy to find, especially in this area. He continued chatting with her comfortably, sharing small talks from his daily activities, details from the Emberflame Grimoire, and even some silly jokes he'd heard from Rena and Fiora. While Seraph remained quiet, her violet eyes now occasionally shifted, looking more attentive than before. After a while, Orion stood, gently stretching as he glanced outside. It's good to see you eating again, Seraph. Keep it up, alright? I'll bring you more later. He turned to leave but paused briefly by the doorway. Rest well. I'll see you soon. She turned her head to look at his fading back before the door shut closed. Haha, yes. Finally. Looks like my efforts weren't wasted. Orion laughed out loud once inside his room, feeling refreshed seeing her finally eat something. Calm down, master. You look like a clown. cthnovelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Chapter 88, Swordsmanship, calm down, master. You look like a clown. Eyes closed face. Haha, matters little. I'm just happy today. Looks like it won't be long before she completely melts. He jumped on the bed and lay down, looking at the ceiling with happy eyes. I didn't know small things could get you so happy. Orion smiled, I'm a simple man. The happiness of those who I care about brings me happiness. Living a simple life is also a good choice. But for how long can you live such a simple life? He didn't reply, instead staring at the ceiling silently for quite a while. He quietly began, breaking the soft silence enveloping the entire room, will try to live however long I can freely until shit hits the fan. I should head out and talk with Uncle Edgar. She wondered and asked. Talk about what? He stood up, fixing his clothes and hair. I heard from Grandma that Uncle Edgar is actually not a mage but a warrior, and a swordsman at that. So I want to try and learn a few things from him. Lumi curiously asked. Not going to read that book anymore? He lightly shook his head while walking towards the gate. Nah, I'll continue reading that later. It's not efficient anymore to read it before improving myself. Reaching for the gates, he opened them to see Rena and Fiora chatting outside. Master. They bowed toward him and Rena continued with a question, didn't you just enter inside? Are you feeling sick because of those moonberries? She asked worriedly, making even Fiora look at him with concerned eyes. Orion lightly patted her head, nothing like that. I have something I need Uncle Edgar's help with to deal with. You guys can go do your own thing while I go there. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with you, master? Fiora worriedly asked, stretching her face slightly toward him. Orion chuckled and extended his hand toward her head, lightly patting her. Yes, I'm fine. Now you both go. Saying that, he started walking again, looking for Edgar in the mansion. Rena and Fiora looked at each other. Should we head to the library again? Rena asked. Fiora nodded her head before taking one last glance at Orion, then turned her head and left with Rena. Orion continued to wander inside the mansion before asking the maids about Edgar's location and exiting the building. There, he saw him basking in the sun at the front garden of the mansion. Uncle Edgar, are you free right now? He softly approached him and asked. Edgar stood up and lightly bowed, of course, young master. I'm always free. What would you like me to do? Orion looked him up and down before curiously asking, "Are you a sword master, uncle?" Edgar raised an eyebrow. "I'm indeed a swordsman. Don't know about the sword master title though. Sir the Ovalfire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality." Orion chuckled. "No need to belittle yourself, uncle. Grandma told me that you are a sword master, and I don't think she would be wrong." Edgar chuckled hearing his praise. "Well, if she says so, then I must really be a sword master. So what would you like from this old man, master?" Orion took a deep breath. "Teach me swordsmanship. I don't know how to hold a sword, how to stand with one, or how to move in a fight. I've spent my whole life buried in books. I know nothing about real combat, and I don't want to embarrass myself if something happens on the first day of the academy." Edgar looked at him with a hint of praise in his eyes. "Accepting your shortcomings is already a sign of improvement. Most noble sons can't accept their own shortcomings and blame them on others. Come, young master, let's go to the training room inside the mansion. Let's break a bone today." Orion's lips twitched. "Why are you after my bones all of a sudden?" "Ha ha ha," Edgar boisterously laughed. "It's a saying here, nothing more, young master." Saying that, he turned toward the mansion and began walking. Orion and Edgar walked through the mansion's grand hallway, their footsteps softly echoing across the polished marble floors. Orion's heart lightly quickened, anticipation and a touch of nervousness mixing within him as they approached the training room. Upon reaching the large wooden doors leading to the training area, Edgar calmly motioned to the servants inside. "Everyone, please leave us. The young master needs some privacy while training." The servants quickly obeyed, bowing respectfully before quietly exiting the room, leaving Edgar and Orion alone in the spacious hall. The training room was massive, its walls lined with racks holding an array of weapons, blades of every shape, size, and material. Edgar walked over to one of the racks and picked out a wooden practice sword, carefully handing it over to Orion. "Try holding this first, young master. Tell me how it feels." Orion grasped the sword, his fingers curling around the hilt. He frowned slightly, giving it a few experimental swings. "It feels off. Too heavy near the tip. It doesn't balance right." Edgar nodded appreciatively and said with a faint smile, "Good observation. Balance is vital. Let's try another one." They continued methodically, Edgar handing Orion various wooden swords one after another. Orion carefully analyzed each sword's balance, weight, and grip, calmly sharing his thoughts as Edgar quietly observed his choices. Finally, Orion's fingers wrapped around a slightly longer wooden longsword. He took a deep breath, feeling its balance perfectly matching his grip. "This one," he said firmly, eyes bright with satisfaction. "This sword fits me." "If that's how you feel," Edgar said, smiling gently. He then stepped back, spreading his hands wide. "Now, young master, attack me with everything you have. Don't hesitate." Orion raised an eyebrow. "You sure? You're wide open right now." Edgar smirked at him. "Don't worry about me, young master. If I were so weak as to get hurt by someone who hasn't even formed his elemental rune, then I would be too ashamed to live." Orion's lips twitched hearing the jab at him. He inhaled deeply, gathering his strength. He tried to take the best form and stance he could, but in Edgar's eyes it was full of openings. He didn't take a second longer and sprinted toward Edgar, swinging the sword wildly with his entire raw strength focused on the sword. Edgar watched calmly. And just as the sword was about to hit his chest, he took a single step back, avoiding the attack cleanly. Orion's eyes flashed. He didn't stop but instead lunged forward and tried to stab Edgar with the tip of the sword. Edgar's eyes flashed with surprise. However, at the precise moment before Orion's sword could touch him, he shifted swiftly, fluidly stepping behind Orion and delivering a sharp, precise strike to his wrist. "Ah!" Orion grimaced, involuntarily dropping the wooden sword, the weapon clattering to the ground. "That was excellent for someone who has never trained with a sword. Your eye for catching weakness is commendable, young master. However, everything else leaves much to be desired." Edgar first praised, then directly told him his shortcomings. Chapter 89, Improving. You moved too fast from the start, your stance was a total mess. And even the way you held the sword was wrong, while your movements were all over the place, he said while pointing at the sword below. Pausing slightly, he continued, only your last move was pretty good, it could have caught someone off guard. But well, there are no ifs on a battlefield. Let's start from the basics. Orion took a deep breath and picked up the sword again. Edgar moved and got a sword for himself as well and began showing him how to use a sword. Over the next 3 hours, Edgar methodically taught Orion the fundamentals of swordsmanship. He began with the proper stance first, shoulder width apart, dominant foot slightly back, knees slightly bent, spine straight, keeping weight evenly distributed. Hold the sword with both hands in front, angle the tip slightly upwards, and eyes focused on the opponent ahead, he instructed while fixing Orion's stance himself. Your stance is your foundation, Edgar emphasized again, demonstrating the ideal posture. Orion carefully mirrored him, adjusting slightly based on Edgar's corrections. Next, they moved on to gripping the sword firmly but flexibly. Edgar patiently adjusted Orion's grip, explaining the importance of wrist flexibility and finger positioning for precise control. Now, try a simple slash, Edgar instructed, demonstrating fluidly. Orion mimicked Edgar's movement, his initial swings clumsy but slowly improving with each repetition. Good, but put more power from your hips, not just your arms, Edgar advised, observing carefully. Orion nodded, adjusting his movements, gradually feeling the strength and stability that came from his lower body. His slashes grew cleaner, sharper, and more controlled. Excellent. Again. Edgar commanded, steadily increasing the complexity, introducing defensive stances, parries, and counterattacks. Sweat soon trickled down Orion's forehead, his breathing growing heavier. It was more of a mental strain than physical, as fixing so many minor errors in his form was taking a toll on his psyche. But with sheer determination, he kept going forward without complaint. This should be enough for the first day, young master, he said, placing his sword back. Your body also needs some time to adjust, so resting now would be better than risking an injury. Hia. Orion collapsed onto the ground, panting. Training in swordsmanship is no joke. Edgar laughed out loud, haha, this is just the beginning, young master. We haven't even really started the true path of swordsmanship. The difficulty will increase dozens of times when you form your first elemental rune and learn how to infuse your sword with mana. That will be the time when you start learning mana techniques. However, his eyes hid something else. Training Orion today reminded him of how he used to train Lucian all those years ago. If young master was still here, he would have long since passed the 9th tier. He inwardly shook his head and stopped thinking about the topic. It's like going from riding a bicycle to piloting a fighter jet, greater than over equal to less than over equal to. He just decided to ignore her, not having enough energy to banter with her. How did I perform though? Was I average or above average? He curiously asked, getting up from the ground. Edgar chuckled, you did splendidly, master. You trained for nearly 4 hours on your first day, when most give up in an hour or two. And you fixed both your stance and grip. We need to do more work on your movement though. But you already did better than most geniuses out there. Search the novel, fir.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion smiled weakly, breathing still uneven from the exhausting training. That's good to hear, Uncle Edgar. At least I didn't embarrass myself completely. Edgar laughed warmly, placing a reassuring hand on Orion's shoulder. You have far exceeded my expectations for your first session, young master. Keep training diligently, and I assure you, you'll surpass even your own expectations soon enough. Orion nodded earnestly, wiping the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. Thank you, Uncle Edgar. See me beat the shit out of those nobles in the academy, just keep training me. Anytime, young master, Edgar laughed in amusement. Feel free to call upon me whenever you need more training. The sword is as much about diligence and perseverance as it is about talent. As if my master is lacking in talent. Learning the basics would have been easier if he had formed an elemental rune. Orion chuckled softly hearing her words. Well, it was a good training session. Now I know I'm a complete noob at this. But since I can feel visible improvements, then there's no reason for me not to train. I thought that you would train like a madman, master. Orion speechlessly heard her words. Are you taking me for an idiot? Why would I break my body on the first day? True, you will have more opportunities to break your body after all. Hee hee. After exchanging a few more pleasantries and discussing some future training schedules, Orion bid farewell to Edgar and began his weary walk back toward his room. I just want to sleep at this point, he inwardly muttered. Won't you read more of that book, master? Why are you after my ass to make me read that book? Will I become Gandalf if I continue to read it? He speechlessly asked. I was bored. There's nothing like that in the book, master. TT. He shook his head and continued walking toward his room. Upon arriving, Orion saw Fiora and Rena patiently waiting outside, their eyes brightening instantly upon seeing him. Master, you're back. Rena beamed, quickly stepping forward to open the door for him. Maids told us that you were training with Sir Edgar, Fiora said softly, her eyes filled with admiration. Orion chuckled lightly, nodding as he entered the room, his muscles relaxing as he entered the familiar space. Yes, Uncle Edgar was teaching me swordsmanship. It was more exhausting than I thought though. Rena closed the door behind them, approaching Orion with a gentle smile. Master, would you like a massage? It will help relieve your fatigue. Fiora nodded enthusiastically, already preparing some aromatic oil from the table. Why yes, please allow us to ease your fatigue, master. Orion gave them a playful smile, nodding lightly. How can I reject it when two such beauties are asking for it? I would appreciate that. Both of their cheeks blushed pink hearing his words. This way, young master, Rena said, gesturing toward the bed. They carefully guided him to the bed, helping him remove his outer robe before Orion lay face down, relaxing onto the soft sheets with a sigh of relief. Rena and Fiora looked at each other before folding their sleeves higher and rubbing hot oil into their palms. Rena gently placed her palm on his back, gently moving her fingers in circles while putting adequate pressure to relieve his stress. Fiora focused on his tired legs, gently kneading his muscles. You two really know how to spoil me, Orion murmured softly, already feeling the warmth and relaxation seep deep into his body. Fiora giggled softly, continuing her careful ministrations. It's our duty to care for you, master. Rena smiled warmly, gently applying more pressure to ease the knots in his back. You worked hard today, master. You deserve this. Rena is better at giving me a massage, he inwardly thought, feeling his sore muscles relaxing. They both feel equally exciting to you, no? Chapter 90, Lacking close combat, Orion inwardly agreed but didn't comment, letting his consciousness slowly fade away under the gentle massage of the two girls. And before long, his breathing evened out, and he drifted into peaceful sleep, the fatigue that had built up during the training melting away slowly. Rena and Fiora exchanged soft, affectionate smiles, continuing their gentle massage a bit longer to ensure Orion's rest was truly restful. Eventually, they quietly cleaned up, gently covering Orion with a soft blanket, ensuring he slept comfortably through the evening. With one final, fond glance at their peacefully sleeping master, they quietly exited the room, leaving Orion to his restful dreams. Orion's eyes gently fluttered open as he felt his stomach rumble. Softly sitting up, he stretched his upper body. They really did a nice massage this time, much better than their first time. Looking around, he saw that they had already cleaned up the room, leaving only him sleeping inside. You should have seen their eyes filled with gentle care. I might just melt looking at them. // Calm down, baby girl. Those eyes were not for you but for me. Orion smirked and shot her down. _ I feel like a bum. Sleep, wake up, eat breakfast, eat lunch, sleep, eat dinner. He chuckled to himself before standing up. Well, it's dinner time now. Saying that, he went to wash his face inside the washroom before heading out. After exiting the room, he found Rena and Fiora standing there, neat and clean. Clearly having taken a bath after massaging him, they turned to look at him and happily bowed before greeting him. Did you have a good rest, Master? Rena asked. Orion nodded his head. Yes, I feel better all over after the massage. We are happy that you liked it, Fiora said while looking down shyly. Orion smiled hearing their words. They continued chatting for a bit before heading towards the dining hall. Good evening, Grandpa, Grandma, he said while entering the dining room, where the maids were preparing plates as usual. He went ahead and sat down beside Celine. Good evening, lad. How's training treating you? Eldrick chuckled and asked, knowing full well that Edgar doesn't go easy while training others. Xianxia the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Celine shook her head and looked him over. You didn't injure yourself while training, did you? Most people hurt their wrists or legs the first time they practice swordsmanship. Orion shook his head. Uncle Edgar is a good teacher. He told me what to fix before I could injure myself. So, what brought this training schedule all of a sudden? Finally feeling the pressure of entering the academy? Eldrick smirked and asked. Orion's lips twitched. Aren't you too light-hearted right now? What happened to the golden era? Is that still coming or were you wrong? Eldrick's expression turned serious as he nodded his head. How can I be wrong about such a thing? He then heaved a sigh. But what's the point in being gloomy all the time? Whatever will happen either way. Orion fell silent and inwardly agreed with Eldrick's words. Eldrick, feeling the atmosphere turning gloomy, quickly changed the subject. Well, anyway, I'm just happy you're not only focusing on your elemental talent but also training your body. You'll be at a disadvantage in the future if your close combat is weak. Celine nodded her head proudly. Of course, after all, whose grandson is he? How can he allow himself to have such major weaknesses? Who will tell them that once I unleash my true form, my close combat abilities will be my strongest card, he thought to himself in amusement. Can you even access that form, Master? Greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Shut it. The three of them continued chatting and eating dinner. And soon, the dinner finished as Orion headed toward his room after dismissing both Rena and Fiora. Entering the room, he closed the door behind him, looking at the softly illuminated room under the moonlight. Tomorrow will be another long day, he softly said. I should take a bath first. The training really drained me. Saying that, he went to take a bath. After finishing his bath, he came back while drying his hair with his towel. Now that I'm used to bathing with those two, it feels quite empty to bathe alone. Looks like Master is getting used to the noble treatment of this place. In a while, you might become another young Master Pone. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. I can feel it. All of a sudden, his expression turned serious as he spoke in a grave voice. Lumi became startled as she tried to look around to see what he was talking about. What is it, Master? What can you feel? Orion took a deep breath. Temu is calling you. Silence descended in the room as Lumi processed his words. You want to fight? Orion chuckled and dropped onto the bed. I should read a little bit of that grimoire before heading to sleep. He took out the grimoire from his storage ring and began reading, ignoring the seething Lumi. Night descended as he softly drifted off to sleep after placing the grimoire back in his storage ring. Warm sunlight came filtering through the curtains of Orion's room, illuminating it in a hazy golden color. His eyes slowly fluttered open as he woke up. Good morning, Lil Lumi. Good morning. Epsilon. Orion chuckled at her reaction. What? Still angry? That was just a little joke. Yeah, I'm not angry. Not at all. Carrot. Orion smiled and thought for a second. Where did my amazing, beautiful, most brilliant and cute Lumi go. Is the most adorable being in the world angry with me? Cough, Lumi is here, master. And I'm not angry. // Orion nearly burst out laughing but held it in and nodded his head, that's good. How can my dear Lumi be angry with me? He went towards the washroom to get fresh before getting back inside his room and sat down on his bed. Knock knock. Good morning, master. Rise and shine, otherwise you'll be late for the academy. Rina's cheerful voice came from outside. Come in, Orion said before getting up from the bed. Fiora and Rina entered the room, looking at him with smiles. Today you need to be extra prepared. It's your first day at school, after all, Rina said while rolling up her sleeves. Fiora quickly nodded her head along with Rina, why yes, it's a big day for master. He needs to be prepared properly. Orion smiled, well, do as you wish, and just agreed to whatever they decided to do. Fiora and Rina looked at each other and smiled, leading him inside the bathroom. After a good bath, they led him back to the room before making him sit in front of the mirror. Then they began dressing him up like a proper noble for a big event. Orion looked at the process with curiosity. And in a while, they finished dressing him up in a noble robe woven from deep midnight blue spirit silk. It was inlaid with silver threads outlining the edges. Inside, he wore a long inner tunic made of storm gray cotton. A thin belt made from beast leather was tied at his waist. Chapter 91, Flabbergasting everyone. Meanwhile, Rina focused on brushing his hair back, tying it up neatly with a silk band. There, she softly said, stepping back with a look of satisfaction. When Orion finally looked into the mirror, even he paused for a moment. Damn. I actually look like a young noble now. He master, if I didn't know better, I'd mistake you for a visiting prince. Greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Rina placed a finger on her chin and focused on his head, but your hair are getting longer, do you intend to keep them long, master? Orion looked at his slightly long hair in the mirror, well, I will think about that later, they are good for now. Fiora, on the other hand, stood with sparkling eyes filled with anticipation, what do you think, master? Orion stood up, giving the robe a slight adjustment as he walked toward the mirror and turned. Not bad. Makes me feel like I'm attending a coronation or something. Rina smirked. Well, you are going to make a grand entrance at the academy. Might as well do it in style. 10 out of 10 outfit. But, master, just imagine the shock on those snobby noble brats when you walk in like this. Ah, I can already imagine noble daughters falling in love with you on first sight. Orion smiled faintly. Good. Let them remember my face. As for the noble girls, well, I will deal with that when the time comes. Alright, let's go. I want to see Grandpa and Grandma's reaction, he excitedly said as he walked toward the exit. Rina and Fiora looked at each other and proudly smiled before following after him. Just as he exited the room, he remembered Seraph. I'll wait, I won't be back before evening, I should meet up with Seraph before leaving. He said to the 2 girls following him, you go on ahead and I will follow up in 5 minutes. Both of them nodded and continued walking ahead, while Orion changed his direction and headed toward Seraph's room, which was just beside his own. Knock knock. Good morning, Seraph. It's me, he said and waited for a second, already expecting no reply from the other side. He softly pushed open the door. His eyes slightly twitched seeing her sit in the same place again, does she not move from there? Is she fixed in one place? Even still, he walked forward and sat down in front of her. Slowly, she turned her head towards him. However, this time even she paused looking at his attire. Orion clearly caught her reaction and felt smug inside. I look good, right? I will be attending the entrance ceremony of the academy today, so I decided to drop by early as I'll have to leave soon. Saying that, he replaced the plate of moonberries, since she had already finished the previous one. Without any reply, she quietly listened to his talks. However, if one were to carefully observe her body language, They could understand that she was getting more and more used to his daily talks as the days passed. And after a few minutes, he stood up. "Well, that's about it. I'm in a hurry, let's chat more next time." Saying that, he left toward the gate while waving his hand. Slowly, she turned her head and looked at his fading back, her eyes regaining some of their lost light as she felt the genuine warmth that Orion was providing her. Walking toward the dining room, Orion thought about Seraph. "I'm getting closer and closer to warming her up. And it hasn't even been that long, Master. It's been days and she hasn't even nodded toward me." He inwardly shook his head and decided to just give her more time. Not like he could do anything else. He wasn't even sure if she was lucid or if there was something wrong with her consciousness. All he could do was try his best. Soon, he arrived at the dining hall. Pushing open the gates, he entered inside. "Haha, lad, good mo." Eldric's words paused all of a sudden as his gaze landed on Orion. Celine turned to look at him, her eyes flashing with pleasant surprise. All the maids stopped doing whatever they were doing and stared at Orion with wide eyes. Cough, "Good morning, Grandpa, Grandma." Orion inwardly laughed while calmly greeting them. My, who was Mr. Handsome today?" Celine smiled and stood up from her chair, walking toward him. "Rena and Fiora did a good job today. You really look like royalty." "You gave me a shock, lad. I thought someone changed my grandson." Eldric chuckled to himself as he came to his senses. The maids blushed and hurriedly lowered their heads, focusing back on their tasks. Celine looked him up and down and led him beside her to the chair. "Dear, remember, do not fall for beauties in the academy. Many will try to win you over either to gain power or because of your appearance." Orion clicked his tongue in wonder. Will they dare to do that with Arya and Amelia around? Hee, Celine softly giggled, "You're not wrong about that. But still try your best not to fall for those traps." "Bah, you worry too much. He isn't a kid. He knows how to take care of himself." Eldric, on the other hand, was completely worry-free about him. Orion inwardly smiled. "Yes, I'm already over 2 months old. Grandpa is right, Grandma. I'm not a kid who will get tricked so easily." Celine softly shook her head. "Maybe I was being too worried. Anyways, eat up. You should increase your diet from now on. I asked Edgar to buy higher quality meat and vegetables just for you. They should help with nourishment as well." The three of them continued to chat and eat as Orion finished one plate after another and soon felt his stomach filling to the brim. Standing up, he said, "I will be going to the academy then, Grandpa, Grandma." Eldric and Celine smilingly nodded their heads and didn't keep him there for long. SAR the Novel Fire, the net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Heading out, he saw Edgar and Lucan standing at the gate with the carriage ready. "Haha, ready for the start of your legendary journey, young master?" Lucan laughed and asked while getting the carriage ready. Edgar slightly bowed. "It will be a big day for you, young master. Entrance ceremony for new students will happen today. You might even get to see the dean." Orion raised an eyebrow. "Might? Doesn't she come out for such ceremonies?" Lucan shrugged his shoulders. "She is quite elusive. She comes and goes as she wishes. We can't be sure if she will attend or not. Though there are 2 vice deans who handle most of the academy affairs in her stead." "Well, I'll see about that when the time comes. Let's go for now. I don't want to be late on the first day." Saying that, he got on the carriage. "Haha, you worry for nothing, young master. There is still a while before the entrance ceremony starts. You will have more things to do before that even." Lucan chuckled and sat at the driver's seat. Edgar nodded and got on the carriage as well. "It will be a fun first day, young master. Though you will also have to take classes from the first day." Chapter 92, Entrance. Orion lazily stretched inside the carriage. That's for the better. I can't wait to learn how to make affinity runes." Edgar smiled and became silent as the carriage rolled forward through the streets of the second ring. Orion leaned his elbow against the window, resting his chin on his palm. The early morning sunlight illuminated the silent capital. Outside, the streets gradually grew livelier. Children played with their parents, while young adults, each dressed in their best attire, walked towards the grand path that led to Thunderhall Academy's outer gate. The towering walls of the Thunder Peak Royal Academy loomed in the distance, like a divine fortress watching over the capital. From such a distance, it didn't look like a simple academy. Instead, it looked like a floating war fortress housing some of the most elite soldiers of the kingdom. Orion's black eyes scanned the crowd in boredom. There were boys and girls with tightly clutched scrolls, probably commoners with how nervous they were behaving. Then there were the nobles, some exuding arrogance, some pride, some indifference, only a scant few were nervous among them. The funniest of them were the nobles who walked as if they owned the kingdom. Carriages rolled past now and then, carrying high-ranking nobles or prodigies belonging to rich families. A few students looked up enviously as Orion's carriage passed. One boy in particular caught Orion's eye, a scrawny kid with oversized robes tripping over his own boots, yet still trying to keep pace with a group of students walking ahead. Though they didn't wait for him. But Orion felt something different from him. His affinity, it's tier 3? He tilted his head and thought in confusion. He was feeling something off about the boy, but he couldn't pinpoint it exactly. All he could tell was that the boy was more talented than the students around him. He shook his head and chuckled softly, everyone's walking in with dreams in their eyes. Some will rise. Some will be stepped on. Edgar glanced back from the opposite seat, his expression calm but thoughtful. That's how it has always been, young master. The academy not only trains geniuses but also filters out those who can't walk this path. Orion tapped his fingers on the glass, his smile remaining unfaltering. How lovely. It sure sounds like a nice place. Lucan's laugh echoed from the front seat, muffled through the carriage wall. Don't let the talk scare you, young master. Most people just fail quietly, pack their bags, and return to obscurity. Only a few leave behind broken bones. That's supposed to be comforting? Orion said dryly. Edgar smiled faintly. You don't have to worry too much, young master. You can rise above the others with your sheer talent. The academy won't pose much of a problem for you. Maybe for me, Orion muttered under his breath. The carriage slowed slightly as it merged with the stream of people heading toward the outer plaza. The academy's outer gate stood like a silent butcher on the lookout for demons. Orion gazed at the towering gates and curiously asked, how many demons have tried to enter the academy in the past? Edgar stroked his short beard and thought for a bit. There have been quite a few instances before this gate was created. The academy suffered heavy casualties. But since the creation of this gate, nearly no such tragedy has occurred again. Nodding his head, he looked toward the gate again. They hadn't even opened yet a crowd was already forming outside. Several guards stood near the gates in dark heavy armor, inspecting carriages and pedestrian tags. They're excited, Orion murmured, looking at the students' faces. Edgar smiled, they should be. It's a new beginning, for all of you. The carriage came to a full stop. Lucan turned slightly and said with a slightly excited voice, let's wait here. In a while, the gate will open and then young master will have his badass entry. Edgar chuckled and nodded his head, yes, that will be a fun sight to watch. The orientation will start later anyway. Orion smiled at their words, then we'll just wait a while. The square outside Thunder Peak Royal Academy was slowly transforming into a sea of excitement and tension. Beneath the watchful gaze of the massive floating fortress that was the academy, the morning sun reflected off the polished stone plaza. The entire area was carved with intricate runes that flickered faintly with dormant energy, clearly having been fortified by the academy. Dozens of students stood scattered in groups, clad in everything from humble travel cloaks to ornate noble robes, whispering, chattering, boasting, or staring nervously at the towering gates. Those gates, around 10 meters tall, forged from storm steel and etched with the crest of House Stormrend, stood sealed for now, like a divine barrier stopping a flood. It was the royal house that had helped the academy to build these gates. And as compensation, they left their mark on it to remind everyone that the royal house had control over the academy. It was a little political move which most nobles easily saw through, but the general public wasn't aware of the hidden hands at play everywhere. Inside his own luxurious obsidian black carriage, Orion leaned comfortably in his seat as he watched the crowd grow. Despite the clatter of hooves and murmurs of excitement through the crowd, the inside of the carriage remained calm. "Feels like I arrived at some festival," Orion commented with amusement, chin resting on his hand. Edgar chuckled, seated across from him. "For many, it's the peak of their lives. To be admitted here is already a dream. Whether they rise or fall inside, they've already seen more than most commoners ever will." Orion shifted slightly, his gaze drawn again to the boy he'd noticed earlier. The one tripping over his own robes, still trailing behind the others. Despite the occasional stumbles, the boy didn't give up. He kept pushing forward. "Well, let's see how far he can go," Orion thought silently. But the boy wasn't important. Not yet. From the driver's seat, Lucan tapped the roof of the carriage. "Ah, they're starting to move. Looks like they're opening the gates now." Outside, with a heavy grinding hum, the enormous gates of Thunder Peak Academy began to part. A low vibration rippled through the plaza as the Academy's mechanisms activated, letting out a deep, resonant thrum that stirred the very air. The gate exuded a radiant glow, making the entire crowd gasp in wonder. However, Orion looked at the gate weirdly. What a show-off. Nothing like this happened the last time I came. Search * the novel, ir.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. One by one, the students began stepping forward, showing their admission badges to the armored guards at the front. Most commoners clutched theirs nervously, holding them out with shaking hands. The guards, clad in dark heavy armor and long blue cloaks, scanned each badge with an enchanted crystal, letting only those who passed through the glowing circle of runes embedded in the arch. "All right," Lucan turned with a grin. "Time for the showstopper to arrive." "You really like to show off, huh?" Orion smilingly shook his head, but even he couldn't hide the hint of excitement in his eyes. Chapter 93, Beginner's Pack at Academy. The carriage door opened with a smooth click. And from within, Orion stepped out. A hush fell over the immediate area. The sunlight descended on the fine noble blue robes, making the silver embroidery glisten like living lightning. His posture was upright, graceful yet relaxed. Search * the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Long black hair tied neatly behind, his expression remained calm. Neither arrogant nor submissive, but approachable in a way that made even the commoners gather their courage to stare at him. Neither nobles nor royals could exude such charm so effortlessly. Even those who didn't know him stopped and stared. Who is that?" one girl whispered, her voice trembling. "Which noble house does he belong to? Is that a visiting prince?" The murmur spread like wildfire. But Orion paid them no mind. He descended the carriage steps leisurely, walking past nobles and commoners alike without sparing a single glance. His black eyes were fixed on the academy gates alone. The crowd instinctively parted for him, students stepping aside as if compelled by their instincts. Orion suppressed a smile as he thought to himself, long hair really is the best for aura farming. I'm definitely keeping this style. Haha, their faces were priceless. A few nobles narrowed their eyes, some out of irritation, others in recognition. That's him, the elemental freak, one muttered. But they didn't dare say it aloud. Orion approached the gates, reached into his robe, and pulled out the same metallic badge he'd used during the entry test. He held it out calmly toward the guards. The lead guard stiffened slightly but quickly nodded. Entry verified. Orion passed through the threshold. The moment he did, the golden runes above shimmered again, casting a pillar of light down upon him for a brief second. The scanning sequence from before, but this time he knew its workings and significance. He didn't flinch. He didn't stop. So this gate was meant to detect demons, makes sense now, he thought as the sensation passed through his body again. A tickle in his soul. But no discomfort. The light soon faded as Orion stepped beyond the glowing barrier of the Thunder Peak Royal Academy's gates, the bustle and murmur of the crowd behind him fading into silence. The interior of the Academy grounds was a world apart from the outside world, a vast self-contained domain layered in magic formations. A wide-open path greeted him, with grass growing at the corners and stone walkways leading up towards the main Academy building in the distance. Towering marble statues of past heroes and legendary alumni stood along the sides, their stone eyes forever fixed on the horizon. Birds sang soft songs sitting atop trees, and a gentle breeze rustled through the growing greenery surrounding the path. Orion took a moment to appreciate it all, his black eyes glancing over every detail. The central building loomed ahead, a majestic structure of white and black marble, its towers reaching proudly into the sky. Sunlight reflected off crystalline window panes. Even comparing it to the Duke and Marquis houses in the second ring, the Academy had its own kind of sacredness. "Looks like a damn palace," Orion muttered under his breath. "Hee, it was built with royal funding after all, Master." "Happy face, V." Lumi replied cheerfully. "Let's head to the administrative office first," Orion inwardly said, adjusting his collar and stepping onto the main path, not knowing eyes were already upon his every move. The administrative office was situated to the side of the main building, a smaller structure with tall columns and a golden plaque that read, "Student Affairs and Admissions." The interior was clean, quiet, and carried the faint scent of old paper and manna ink. As Orion entered, the receptionist, who looked like a stern-looking woman with square glasses and silver hair tied back in a tight bun, looked up from her crystal console. "Name and identification badge, please," she said crisply. However, she soon paused, looking at him again. But she didn't react like the crowd outside and quickly calmed herself down. "Orion Hellstrom," he replied, handing over the metallic token. The woman placed the token on the console, and a soft humming filled the room as arcane runes scanned it. A moment later, she gave a small nod. "Confirmed. Affinity result, Tier 5 Light and Fire and Tier 4 Wood and Wind. Mana channel, 8. Mana capacity, Supreme. Classification, Special Entry." She looked up at him now with eyes filled with shock and realization. "Ah. I see. Please wait a moment." She walked to the back, and a few seconds later, a younger staff member arrived, a young boy with nervousness written all over his face and a leather satchel. "Sir Orion. I'll be handing you your Academy essentials today," he stammered. Orion raised a brow. "Sure." The boy handed him a sealed scroll and a folded bundle wrapped in spirit silk. "Here is your campus map, uniform, and your student badge with your name and identification number." He handed over a second metallic token, sleeker than the first. Orion flicked it open, and etched in silver was his name, Orion Hellstrom, Year 1, Special Grade. Now, the boy hesitated, glancing nervously at his tablet. "Do you intend to live in the Academy dormitories? You have been assigned to the elite wing in the Noble Dormitory Hall. However, staying off campus is also permitted." Orion shook his head. "No need. I'll be staying at my estate." "You understood. I'll register you as an external resident," the boy said, tapping on the crystal screen. "Thanks," Orion nodded and turned to leave. The boy heaved a sigh as if some burden had been lifted off his shoulder. Turning around, he saw the silver-haired woman coming out of the back. "Teacher, why did you throw me at him? You know how dangerous interacting with unknown nobles can be, and one as strong and influential as him," he asked with an accusing tone. The silver-haired woman chuckled. "I just wanted to see how he would treat a commoner. Looks like he is one of the better nobles who don't treat commoners as trash." The young man's eyes flashed with admiration as he remembered Orion's demeanor. "He really looks like what a noble should be. Especially his approachable aura." Bam! The silver-haired woman lightly hit the young man with a stack of papers and sat down again. "We have a lot more work than just thinking about a noble. Get back to work now." The young man rubbed his head and went back to doing his work. Orion Hellstrom," the woman thought to herself with a smile, "let's see if you get drunk off your potential and become another disappointment, or become someone worth remembering for the ages." Once outside, he unfolded the map. The layout was far more massive than he had expected. The testing area, arena, lecture halls, library, dormitories, each was its own ecosystem. The sheer scale made the entire structure feel like a miniature kingdom. This is one huge place, Master. You might not even be able to explore it in an entire day. Degree. Orion folded the map again and placed it inside his storage ring. Then I'll just not explore. Ceremony should be about to start. I should head there and check it out. Chapter 94, Meeting the Princess Again. The sun was already climbing higher in the sky, casting a golden glow over the Academy's pristine white marble paths as Orion walked confidently toward the main building. Looking ahead, he saw the central plaza coming into view, filled with students heading in all directions. Groups broke off toward the dormitories to the northeast and northwest, while others went westward toward the combat fields. Some newcomers glanced at their maps from time to time with furrowed brows, trying to find locations. Orion, in contrast, looked completely relaxed, walking calmly on the pathway. His eyes occasionally shifted toward different paths and structures, matching them to the map he held loosely in one hand. However, the crowd's whispers followed after him. "That's him, the one with 4 affinities," a girl in red robes murmured to her friend, her voice filled with awe. "Did you see how shocked the teachers were when he revealed his 4 affinities? That was a sight to behold." Another student excitedly whispered to her friend while clutching her own badge tightly. A noble-born boy, wearing the sigil of a viscount house on his shoulder, clicked his tongue with an exaggerated sigh. "TCH, show off. Just another spoiled noble. See him crumble down when he can't live up to all that talent." Orion didn't even glance back. Burn with jealousy, you mediocre idiots," he thought with a smirk, flipping the map in his hand just for show. He wasn't even using it now, as he had already memorized the important locations. All that mattered now was reaching the main building and attending the opening ceremony. But just as he reached the edge of the central garden path that led directly into the Grand Academy building, a familiar voice called out from his right. "Wow, Brother Orion. You look like a prince." Orion turned, raising an eyebrow. Arya stood there with stars shining in her eyes as she stared at Orion's figure. She was dressed in dark violet academy robes tailored for herself. Her long hair was tied in a sleek braid over one shoulder. Orion chuckled, "My maids wanted me to look proper on my first day at the academy. So they went the extra mile to prepare me." Beside her stood Amelia, still staring at Orion warily with a spear in her hand. She didn't speak, just like last time. Yet there was a faint twinkle in her eyes looking at the current Orion. Arya softly giggled and nodded her head. "Well, they certainly know what they're doing. You look absolutely handsome with that hairstyle and those clothes. I'll make sure to tell them that the royal princess liked how they dressed me." He dramatically bowed like a noble while smiling. Arya chuckled and softly hit his shoulder. "No need to act so dramatic in front of me." Amelia continued to silently stare at him and Arya's interaction. He looks handsome today, nearly as good as the princes from those empires. His bearing is really out of this world. Why don't you try to marry him, girl? Maybe you'll have a bright future." "Shut up. I don't need to marry anyone to have a bright future." Amelia shot her down without thinking. "Tisk, you're not wrong either. After all, you have my venerable self." They continued to bicker inwardly as Arya stepped closer and motioned for him to walk with them. "Come on. The ceremony's starting soon. The vice deans will be giving speeches, and I don't want to be stuck standing at the back of everyone. Who would dare to deny you front row seats?" Orion said, chuckling. As the 3 of them walked together down the wide central path, the surrounding students couldn't help but stare again, this time not just at Orion, but at the trio as a whole. "Wait, is that the princess? Who's that with her? Don't tell me he knows both of them? Unfair. He's from the Hellstrom family, so maybe that's why they know each other." However, the trio ignored the surrounding voices and continued heading down the main path toward the main building while chatting and laughing together. Orion glanced at Amelia and curiously asked, "Why doesn't she speak much? She acts like a statue all the time." Arya placed a hand on her lips and giggled softly, "Hee, she's just like that with others. She speaks quite freely when it's just the two of us." Orion shook his head, while Amelia didn't say anything. Soon, the three of them entered the main building as Arya led them toward the auditorium. As Orion, Arya, and Amelia stepped into the auditorium, they were greeted by a grand scene that immediately captured their attention. The auditorium itself was nothing short of breathtaking. Massive crystal chandeliers suspended from the ceiling showered soft, magical illumination down onto rows upon rows of seats arranged in a semicircle. At the center of the auditorium floated a platform with two large statues of armored knights holding banners displaying the proud insignia of Thunder Peak Royal Academy. Hundreds of students had already taken their seats, their murmurs forming a continuous, excited hum throughout the hall. Upon noticing Orion, Arya, and Amelia, whispers surged once again, turning into barely concealed exclamations. "Look! Isn't that Princess Arya? Forget her, who's the handsome guy beside her? Are they seriously walking together? He's that For Affinity prodigy, right? Damn. And the legacy spear-bearer. Amelia's with him too? Well, that's not surprising, since she is the shadow of the princess." Everyone's eyes widened at their arrival as they turned their heads toward the group. Students instinctively stepped aside to clear a path as soon as they saw Arya in the lead. Orion inwardly chuckled, relishing the expressions of awe and envy that greeted them. I can get used to these stares. Hee, you'll get more and more of such stares before they turn into pure admiration. Orion chuckled and nodded his head. Indeed, they'll only envy me until they think they have a chance to catch up with me or surpass me. The day they realize the unsurpassable gap between us will be the day they accept their defeat. Master is the best. All hail Master. Asterisk. He nearly burst out laughing in the auditorium but held back. Ha, stop it before I go from confident to straight up arrogant. I'll make sure nothing like that happens. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Inwardly shaking his head, he glanced sideways at Arya, her chin held high with a calm smile playing on her lips. She was clearly accustomed to such attention, though Amelia, walking on Arya's other side, still wore an indifferent mask, yet beneath her calm exterior, she felt mildly uncomfortable. Xianxia the novel, ir.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. So many eyes, Amelia thought, her fingers unconsciously tightening around her spear. Her spear's voice sighed softly. Relax, girl. Just follow Arya's example and walk tall. You're not lesser than these people. Orion leaned slightly toward Arya, whispering with amusement, I can practically hear their jealousy sizzling in the air. Is this normal for you? Arya laughed softly, her violet eyes twinkling mischievously. Their envy and jealousy are directed at you, not me. All they have for me is admiration. Orion's lips twitched at her words, how lucky I am. From nearby, a noble girl with strawberry blonde hair whispered softly to her friend, is that Orion Hellstrom? Gods, he looks even better up close. Chapter 95, Weistein's speech beside her, a dark-haired noble boy with House Thorn's crest clicked his tongue irritably. Calm down, Claire. You're drooling. Shut up, Lucas, you're just jealous. Claire whispered fiercely with flushed cheeks. But she turned her head and looked at Lucas with unkind eyes, and why are you even here? I already told you I don't like you. Lucas gritted his teeth and stood up before leaving without saying another word. Further ahead, a boy named Leon whispered excitedly to his companions, he knows Princess Arya personally? Maybe those rumors about him aren't exaggerated. SAR the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Quiet, Leon, hissed a girl named Maya. He'll hear you. Well, I don't think he would mind us. After all, another young man named Dane pointed around them, everyone is already discussing him. The trio looked at each other and decided to mind their own business. Orion, however, paid none of the students there any mind, calmly walking alongside Arya until they reached the plush front row seats, but they were the same as all the other seats, clearly showing how the academy treats all its students equally. As they took their places, Orion settled into his seat. Arya sat in the middle with Orion at her right and Emilia on her left. Orion continued to feel eyes drill into his back. I really did choose the right hairstyle, he thought smugly, casually crossing his legs and waiting for the ceremony to begin. Minutes later, a heavy silence suddenly descended upon the auditorium as two imposing figures stepped onto the floating platform from opposite ends. An instructor named Viren stepped forward first, calling out clearly, "Everyone, rise to welcome Vice Dean Hargan and Vice Dean Eleonora." All students rose swiftly, respectfully silent. Orion joined, curiously observing the two vice deans. Interesting, such opposing auras. One like a rose, the other like an old sword. One was an elegant woman whose very presence captured every eye. She possessed a refined beauty, dressed in flowing emerald robes that hugged her mature, enticing figure. Her silky raven-black hair drooped down over her shoulders as she surveyed the students with a charming, playful smile, a smile so deadly it made the male students in the auditorium straighten their backs. This was Vice Dean Eleonora. Expert in the spirit arts and also the highest-ranking teacher in the spirit art department of the academy. She's feared and admired across the surrounding kingdoms, as rumors said she had once defeated a group of people who tried to ambush her. And the thing that made people fear her was that she massacred the entire group, a group made up of beings above Tier 9. Beside her stood an elderly man in a deep azure robe embroidered with cloud and thunder motifs. His beard reached his chest, and his eyes were sharp, with an aura of unquestionable authority. This was Vice Dean Hargan, a legend among elementalists and known across the surrounding kingdoms for molding some of the kingdom's finest mages. Hargan stepped forward first. His voice was calm but carried effortlessly to every corner of the room. Silence. The hall obeyed in an instant. His gaze swept the room slowly. You stand within the heart of Thunder Peak Royal Academy. This is not a sanctuary. This is not your home. This is not a place where you come to simply exist. From the audience, a boy named Felix nervously whispered to his friend Tessa, "He's terrifying, are we going to survive here?" "Quiet," Tessa muttered anxiously. "I heard he expelled 3 nobles last year just for tardiness." This academy, Hargan continued, was forged in the chaos of war. It was built to raise those capable of leading kingdoms, defending our home, and confronting those accursed demons. He raised his hand and mumbled a name, and with a spark, a storm cloud condensed above the stage. "Those of you admitted here are the finest your families, clans, and provinces could offer. But talent alone means nothing. I have seen prodigies burn out within a year." The cloud crackled, then dispersed. "I do not care for your birthright. Nor your wealth. Nor the crest on your robes. The only currency that matters here is progress." He looked directly at a few nobles, making them flinch. "In 1 year, half of you will be forgotten. In 2, only a third will remain. And by the time you graduate, if you do, you will understand what it means to survive." Arya sat at the front with a serene expression, unmoved by his words. Emilia's eyes sharpened, quietly agreeing with the speech. Orion, meanwhile, leaned his chin on his palm and thought, he really has the classic "beat the pride out of you" speech memorized. Does he say this each year? A boy 2 rows behind muttered, "Will he beat us with sticks if we don't perform well?" "Shoo, just listen. That's Vice Dean Hargan." After a long pause, Hargan finally stepped back. A hush remained after his stern speech, students shifting uncomfortably, absorbing his uncompromising words. Instructor Viren coughed lightly and smiled wryly, stepping forward once more. "Thank you, Vice Dean Hargan, for such a candid address." Hargan gave a calm nod, stepping back beside the beautiful Vice Dean Eleonora. From the seats, Arya leaned over to Orion and whispered softly, "Charming speech, wasn't it?" Orion chuckled quietly, "I'm sure everyone's feeling encouraged now." Behind them, a noble student named Marcus mumbled, visibly shaken, "Great. I can feel my future slipping away already." His friend Henry snickered at him. Your father can't buy your way through this academy, Marcus. Marcus glared back, saying nothing further. Orion shifted slightly, anticipation rising as Vice Dean Eleonora gracefully stepped forward, her serene and captivating presence immediately calming the restless students. This will definitely be interesting, Orion thought, intrigued by the stark contrast between the two powerful individuals now presiding over their academic life. As Vice Dean Eleonora stepped forward, her heels clicked on the platform as her calm gaze swept across the hall. A soft, teasing smile played on her lips. That was the scary version, she said smoothly, eliciting a few nervous chuckles. Allow me to offer the welcoming one. The boys in the front row sat up straighter without even realizing. Here at Thunder Peak Royal Academy, Eleonora continued, you will suffer. You will bleed. But you will also grow. You will learn magic, true magic, the kind that makes armies tremble and kingdoms stable. She folded her hands in front of her, her eyes shining faintly with crackling thunder. You will find comrades, rivals, maybe heartbreaks, and perhaps, something or someone worth protecting. Some students glanced at each other with a mix of nerves and excitement. Eleonora smiled more brightly. Whether you are a genius or a hard worker, remember this, every day, the academy will give you a chance to be more than what you were yesterday. Do not waste that chance. She turned her gaze slightly, locking eyes with Arya, then briefly with Orion. Because sometimes, fate plants something exceptional among the ordinary. I wonder, who among you will be that exception? The students inhaled as one. She's got quite the charm, I'll give her that, Orion thought, smiling faintly as he met her gaze without flinching. After a short silence, the floating lights returned to full brightness. Vice Dean Hargan stepped forward again. We will now begin the roll call for top students who achieved extraordinary results in the entrance test. Those called will step onto the stage. Chapter 96, NYSS Blackwell. The entire atmosphere immediately changed. The crowd became restless as they exchanged excited glances. Everyone wanted to know who were the top-ranking students of this year. Search the novelfire.net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Eleonora smiled seeing the students so excited. Calm down, dear students. We will call the top-ranked students one by one. There are a total of 9 who performed exceptionally. Arya leaned forward slightly in anticipation. Are you excited? Mr. Topper, she playfully asked Orion. He chuckled in response. I want to see who else is there. I only remember Sylvia from the test. Hee, at least we 3 are among them, she cheerfully said. Vice Dean Eleonora's voice echoed gently across the auditorium, each word slipping like silk into the ears of the students, drawing their attention like moths to flames. There are 10 students whose performance during the entry trials stood out from the rest. While their ranks are numbered from 10th to 1st, do remember, most of them are separated by mere margins, she said with a calm smile. Only the top 2 hold a noticeable gap from the rest. She glanced toward Vice Dean Hargan, who gave a simple nod, confirming her words. The tension in the auditorium grew thicker, hearts beating a little faster as every student silently hoped their name would be called. Let us begin, Eleonora said, lifting a thin slip of enchanted paper from the podium. All the students seemed to hold their breath. 10th ranked. Her voice was smooth and calm. Cale Duskfield. A tall, lean boy with short light green hair and a green-trimmed robe stood up from the 3rd row of noble seats. His expression was mixed, half pride, half embarrassment at being the last of the top 10. Still, applause rippled through the hall. Candidate Cale Duskfield, Eleonora read aloud. Marquis House Duskfield. 5 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 wind affinity. Cale nodded slightly at the audience and ascended the steps with confidence, hiding his nerves well. 9th, she continued, her eyes scanning the slip, Tavian Greyridge. A young man in commoner's attire nervously stood up. Taking a deep breath, he gathered the courage to ascend toward the floating platform. He was a commoner who was raised in the capital and entered the academy through sheer effort and talent. Tavian Greyridge. Thunder Peak Royal Academy student. 5 mana channels. Mana capacity, intermediate. Tier 3 fire and Tier 2 wind affinity. The crowd began to murmur amongst themselves as they looked at the commoner ascending the steps. "Hey, it's him, the commoner who passed with flying colors," one student whispered to his friend. "I heard his talent is one of the best among all the commoners this year," a young noble in the group softly said. Another student who wore commoner's attire softly rebutted, "Only commoners? His talent is one of the best among all the students admitted this year." Such discussion spread all over the place as Tavian quickly walked up to the floating platform. Gazing above, he saw the massive statues, and he felt the illusion as if they were staring down at him. Shaking his head, he quickened his steps. 8th, Philira Norwin. A petite girl with honey-blonde hair tied in a bun slowly rose. She belonged to House Norwin, another Marquis house known for its healing and botanical prowess. Philira Norwin. Marquis House Norwin. 5 mana channels. Mana capacity, intermediate. Tier 3 wood affinity, Tier 3 water affinity. Philira bowed her head politely with composure and gracefully walked up the platform and stood beside Kale. The two exchanged a brief nod. 7th. Eleanora's voice rose just slightly with amusement, Garen Harrington. A broad-shouldered young man stood from the seats below. His robes were dark brown and gold, and he wore the sigil of House Harrington on his shoulder, one of the 3 prestigious Duke houses. A few students whispered, "Ah, him. Thunder and Earth. Garen Harrington. Duke House Harrington. 6 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 Thunder and Tier 3 Earth affinities." Garen strode forward, arms behind his back with an indifferent face. Despite being ranked 7th as a Duke House heir, no one dared to mock him. His sheer size and natural pressure made that mistake an unattractive one. 6th, Eleanora paused, reading the name, then her face lit up with a slight smile as she continued, "Elias Marrow." A hush fell briefly. A commoner? Above a Duke House heir? From the back row, a carefree-looking youth slowly stood up. Thin, dark-haired, and wearing worn-out clothes. He barely looked like he belonged in this hall, yet his aura seemed to attract everyone's gaze. Elias Marrow. Thunder Peak Royal Academy student. 5 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 gravity affinity. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. No one expected an advanced elemental affinity user to come here. Gravity was one of the revered 6 advanced elements, rare beyond comparison. Only light and darkness elemental affinities were rarer than advanced elemental. Gravity affinity? Are you fucking serious? 2 light element users weren't enough that the heavens sent us an advanced affinity user, someone cursed under his breath, feeling the pressure increase by many folds. Shoo, don't say it out loud. He's not a nobody anymore. Even if you're a noble, you won't be able to save yourself from him once he grows up. Hushed whispers began everywhere as he calmly stepped forward. Orion, however, narrowed his eyes. "That's the boy I saw earlier, the one with the decent talent I felt." Interesting. So he had an advanced affinity. No wonder I felt something different from him. But look how much he changed, master. He was tripping all over the place before. Orion inwardly chuckled, people change at a moment's notice if they get money. He, on the other hand, got an advanced affinity. Should I have also shown an advanced affinity? You already showed a top-tier affinity, master. That would be too shocking for them. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to, /. Orion shook his head in amusement. Elias meanwhile reached the top of the floating platform and stood beside the other commoner there. They nodded their heads at each other in greeting. Elias. Eleanora turned around and softly said, "You might have a chance to reach the top of even empires if you can improve your affinity to tier 4. It might be impossibly hard, but there is a minuscule chance that a miracle might happen. So try your best to grasp it if that time comes." Elias's face turned solemn as he bowed. "I will forever remember your teaching, Teacher Eleanora." She nodded her head and turned her gaze back to the paper. 5th. Sylvia Stormbolt. The auditorium once again lit up with excited murmurs at the mention of her name. It's the heiress of House Stormbolt. I heard she has been training with her sword since she was 5. She might be the most talented swordswoman of our year right now. Sylvia rose gracefully from her seat. Her long scarlet hair and sharp scarlet eyes looked ahead at the platform as she elegantly walked towards it. Sylvia Stormbolt. Duke House Stormbolt. 6 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 thunder and Tier 3 wind affinity. She reached the stage and went to stand beside Garen. 4th, Eleonora continued without pause, NYSS Blackwell. Chapter 97, Rewards. A black-haired girl slowly rose from her seat, wearing a flowing black dress that clung tightly to her body. A shadowy gown veil hung over her head, casting a faint shadow over her pale, expressionless face. Her skin was like porcelain, made more noticeable by the inky black lipstick that painted her lips. Dark kohl traced her eyes, matching the abyss-like black of her irises, and her fingernails, glossy and pitch black, flashed faintly as her hand brushed against her robes. Each step she took made the crowd's heart race in fear and trepidation. A few students shivered as she passed, yet no one dared to stare at her for more than a second as they all averted their gazes. NYSS Blackwell. Duke House Blackwell. 6 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 thunder and Tier 3 shadow affinity. What the fuck? Another advanced affinity user? A student nearly cried tears of regret for being born in this generation. The fuck is happening here? Why are so many monsters rising in our time? Some students actually felt like dropping out of the academy. After all, even if they had Tier 2 affinity, there was a considerable gap between their foundation and the foundation of these few monsters who stepped on the stage. Meanwhile, NYSS ascended to the top of the floating platform and stood there alone, away from everyone. She's like goth royalty, someone whispered in awe. Thunder and shadow, what a terrifying combo, another muttered. No wonder they call her the freak of House Blackwell. Orion looked at her with shining eyes, damn, a goth baddie. Hee hee master, she looks perfect for you. See those calm and indifferent eyes, as if everyone here is beneath her. You will be the perfect match for her. Orion inwardly chuckled, calm down, I don't know her behavior or anything. Who knows if we're even compatible or not. Let's just wait and see how everything goes. Eleonora smiled sweetly looking at NYSS but didn't comment further. After giving the crowd a few seconds to calm down, she continued. 3rd. Pausing a little, she smiled faintly, Amelia Ashbourne. The students looked at each other with wide eyes. They didn't expect her to be ranked even above the Duke heirs. She really lives up to that weapon. The Spear Saint's daughter? She's a monster with a spear. I heard she is as good as Sylvia with her weapon. Arya, seated beside Orion, leaned slightly and whispered, she deserves the recognition. She's been training like a lunatic ever since she was 5. Orion softly smiled and nodded his head, and inwardly thought, well, she needs to keep up with a monster like you. Of course she has to train hard. Amelia calmly rose from her seat with her unchanging expression. Amelia Ashbourne. House Ashbourne. 6 mana channels. Mana capacity, high. Tier 3 thunder and Tier 3 water affinity. She climbed atop the platform calmly and stood with Sylvia and Garen. Eleonora nodded at Amelia and continued to read, now, for our second-ranked student, and also one of the most talented throughout the history of our academy. She paused and took a deep breath, Arya Stormrend. The crowd breathlessly looked at her before bursting out with cheers and applause. Nobles and commoners alike stood up to welcome her. Arya, however, simply rose from her seat with a calm smile on her face. Hee hee, I will see you up there now, brother Orion. She softly chuckled and began ascending toward the platform. Orion gently shook his head and watched her as she ascended the platform. Arya Stormrend. Royal House Stormrend. 7 mana channels. Mana capacity, peak. Tier 4 light and Tier 4 thunder affinity. She gently announced and nodded at Arya with a smile. Arya smiled back and gently bowed before going to stand beside Amelia. With her going there, the entire crowd became silent, their anticipation surging to the peak as they knew who remained, the anomaly who awakened with 4 elements, one of the brightest stars in the kingdom's history. Eleonora's eyes turned toward Orion, her lips curling into a playful smile, and lastly, the one who unquestionably ranked first in the entrance exam. "Welcome Orion and Hellstrom," she shouted as if someone was entering a boxing ring. Orion smirked and stood up, forcing everyone to turn their gazes toward him from atop the platform. Slowly, he moved forward. Candidate Orion Hellstrom. Noble House Hellstrom. 8 mana channels. Mana capacity, Supreme Tier. Tier 5 Fire, Tier 5 Light, Tier 4 Wood, and Tier 4 Wind affinity. The entire crowd exploded once again, hearing the confirmation from Vice Dean Eleonora about his result. Holy hell, it's still the same. I was expecting the testing orb to malfunction. One boy from a noble family regretfully said. The hell? Do you know how much political power he will give our kingdom once he grows up? We will become the strongest human kingdom. Another young man from a different noble family directly rebuked him. Yes, but we might not be nobles at that time. The first noble thoughtfully said, making even the second noble silent. At another section of the seats, a group of students stared ahead in disbelief. For high-level affinities. 8 mana channels. And supreme grade mana capacity, a girl with azure hair murmured. Who can compare with him? Another older-looking student beside her nodded. It would be hard to find a talent of his level even in the Empire, much less this kingdom. Huh. Hellstrom's really struck gold with him. At another part, a youth from a high-ranking noble family couldn't help but shake his head. Orion slowly ascended the platform with his hands behind his back. His flowing black hair painted a picture of a celestial ascending. All the students gazed at him with bated breath. Search * the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He could also feel the waves of envy, jealousy, admiration, and lust. He turned around to see girls from both commoner backgrounds and nobles looking at him with slightly heated gazes. His lips twitched as he hurried his footsteps. Looking ahead, he saw the 2 giant statues holding the banner majestically standing tall. It's finally my turn to shine here, he thought, reaching the top of the platform. He. You got them all, master. First place. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Of course I did. Who else could have topped my results? Eleonora curiously looked over at him, seeing how he went directly toward Arya and stood beside her. However, the only one who didn't even look toward him was Nyss. She still stood there indifferently. Even Garen nodded toward him out of respect for his talent and background. Eleonora clapped her hands to gather everyone's attention. Welcome to the Thunder Peak Royal Academy, the top geniuses of this year. Your batch probably has the most amount of geniuses in the past hundreds of years. So now, she playfully smiled, let's talk about the rewards the top 10 will receive for giving us such an exceptional display of their talent. Now, from rank 10 to 4, each of them will receive a custom-made armament voucher. They can use this to have the runesmith of our academy make a tier 7 armament for them. Ranked 2nd and 3rd will get the same voucher for a tier 8 armament, while Orion, the first-ranked individual, will get a voucher for a rank 9 armament. Chapter 98, Faction? And not only that, but also the right to obtain spell books from the Arcanium, or rather the library of Thunder Peak Royal Academy. Just like before, 10th to 4th rank will have access to the first floor and can take 1 spell book. Rank 3rd and 2nd will have access up to the 2nd floor and can take 2 spell books with them. Orion will have access to the 3rd floor and can take 3 spell books with him. Vice Dean Hargan stepped up beside her once more and continued from where she left off. And the first-ranked student will gain a special privilege to enter the Origin Mana Pool. Boom. His words sent such an intense shockwave throughout the crowd that even the people atop the platform widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. The Academy had never given out the right to use the origin mana pool in its history for a mere entrance test. Only the geniuses at the top of the Transcendent Tablet ranking could get access to it. Even Arya didn't expect this to happen. As the royal princess of the kingdom, she had once bathed in the origin mana pool, and she had yet to forget that amazing sensation. But since then, she hadn't entered it again, wanting to do so through her own efforts. Nyss's indifferent expression finally cracked as she looked at Orion with a glimmer of interest. Orion, huh? Kikik, girl, see? He already got an entry into the origin mana pool. I'm telling you, you still have time. Once he gets more women, you might not have the chance to get closer to him. The spear whispered into Amelia's ear like a devil tempting a human. Shut up. I'm the one who gets to decide that, she stubbornly said. Suit yourself. Don't come crying to me when it's too late. Meanwhile, a different storm was brewing among the students below. Everyone was losing their minds in envy and jealousy at the absurd opportunity he received, merely due to his absurd talent. On the other hand, Orion simply watched with a calm gaze, for one simple reason: he didn't know what the fuck the origin mana pool even was. Calm down. Hargan's voice boomed through the entire auditorium, instantly silencing everyone. Search * the Oval Fire. At website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. That's enough. What needed to be said has been said. What needed to be given has been given. Disperse, he strictly ordered before turning around and leaving. Eleonora turned toward the crowd and playfully smiled. Well, looks like Vice Dean Hargan is quite busy. So we'll end it here today. You should leave and look for your respective classes. She turned around and began walking away, however, she paused and turned back. And another thing, you all can ask your teachers how we teach students here. After all, this is an academy only in name. The rules are quite lax to give as much creative freedom to our students as possible. Without further ado, she dispersed into a flurry of electric sparks, making the crowd widen their eyes in wonder. She truly is the Vice Dean, so mysterious and charming, one student heaved a sigh of admiration. His friend elbowed him quickly. Shut up, or do you want us to become targets on our first day? The first guy quickly shut his mouth while nervously glancing around. The prodigies atop the platform began to disperse as well. Orion gazed at Elias for a bit as he left. Then his gaze turned toward Nyss, who was looking back at him with the same indifferent expression. However, now there was something else in her eyes, a twinkle of curiosity. Arya turned to face Orion with a teasing smile. Look who became the hottest topic of the academy in a single day. With these rewards, all the noble houses will take notice of you. Especially the origin mana pool. Orion looked toward her and raised an eyebrow. Origin mana pool? I wonder if it'll be effective for me. He tried to fish for information without letting her know he didn't know anything about it. Arya lightly hit his shoulder while giggling. What are you even saying? Origin mana pool is one of the best treasures of our kingdom. He sighed and gave up on his initial bluff. I see. So what does it do exactly? First time hearing about it. Amelia and Arya looked at him with slightly wide eyes. Brother Orion, you don't know what the origin mana pool is? Orion spread his hands and shrugged, clearly showing he knew nothing about it. Arya gently shook her head. How can you arrive at the academy and not know this? Can you just tell me what it is instead of roasting me? He almost felt like smacking her on the head but held himself back as they began walking toward the exit of the auditorium. Amelia walked behind the two of them, silently looking at Orion's back from time to time as she remembered the crazy awards he just received. It has a lot of benefits. You should read about it in the library. But the main thing is, it can strengthen mana channels, enhance foundation, increase comprehension ability for a short time, and fill the sea of consciousness. There are a few more, but those are the main ones, she told him as they exited the auditorium and then the main building. They once again stepped onto the decorated pathway of the academy, with students going to and from the main building. Arya chose the direction and led the group onward. I see, so it's some really good stuff. Orion nodded his head. He got the gist of it, but he still wanted to read details about it so he could make the most of this opportunity. Well, I'll look into it later. Where are we heading now? Classes? I'm interested in affinity rune formation classes, he asked. Hee, just follow me, I'll tell you in a bit, she playfully smiled as the group continued walking through the massive academy. The pathways were bustling again. Students wandered across the stone-paved paths, talking excitedly about the ceremony, the rewards, and especially about the monstrous talent known as Orion Hellstrom. Some stared outright as he passed, whispering to their friends, while others quickly looked away when he glanced their way. Arya, ever relaxed, had her hands folded behind her back as she walked slightly ahead, humming to herself. Emilia, as usual, followed behind with her calm, unreadable expression, but Orion could tell her thoughts were far from calm. He just couldn't pinpoint why they felt so chaotic. So, Arya said as she led them down a different fork in the path from before, we're heading towards the open plaza where student clubs are hosted. Every year after the entrance ceremony, the older students put up booths and try to recruit promising newcomers. Orion raised an eyebrow, so it's like an auction market, but for talent? Arya giggled, kind of. But it's also a tradition. Some of these clubs have prestigious legacies. Getting into one of them early can get you access to private instructors, better facilities, and sometimes even special training grounds. Oh, sounds fun. Master, are you going to join one too? Not sure yet. Let's see what kind of clubs are even there first. Chapter 99, Faction decide. As they turned a corner past the Fountain Plaza, the vibrant energy of the club area hit them like a wave. Dozens of stalls had been set up along the grand open corridor, each decorated with vibrant colors, magical ornaments, and floating sigils advertising their specialties. Enthusiastic seniors called out to students walking by. Join the Elemental Combat Society. Learn to wield elements like a war mage. Our Spirit Beast Taming Club is still accepting Tier 3 affinity students. Alchemy Pavilion is offering starter kits to new alchemy apprentices. From the more eccentric side, Orion also spotted a tent labeled The Cult of the Arcane Duck. He wisely avoided it. Some clubs were more discreet but clearly prestigious, like one under a golden canopy with a sign in calligraphy, Heirloom Profession Guild, Runes, Arrays, Formations. Wow. Orion muttered, eyes wandering across the booths. This place really is something. Arya grinned beside him. Most students either join a club or get invited into one. Of course, the top 10 students will be headhunted like crazy. As if on cue, a tall senior with a golden sash approached them. Excuse me, Orion Hellstrom, right? Orion stopped and turned slightly. I represent the Twin Blade Duelist Society, the senior said, bowing with surprising grace. Our vice captain was impressed by your performance and asked me to invite you personally. We offer full access to private dueling grounds, and we can assign you a sparring partner at your level at all times. Before Orion could speak, another senior arrived, this one a woman with emerald earrings and flowing robes. Dear Orion Hellstrom, our Array Crafters Guild would be honored to have you. We believe someone with your affinities would thrive learning runic formations with us. One by one, students began to notice the crowd forming, and more recruiters started to approach. Uh-oh, Arya chuckled. Looks like the wolves have found their prey. They even ignore me, their princess. Orion smiled politely at each one and listened to their pitch, but with each club, he felt a growing disinterest. Most were prestigious, yes. Some even offered unique benefits, but none felt like they could match his pace. They all seemed structured, bound by rules, or focused too narrowly. He rubbed his chin and finally said, sorry. I'm not planning on joining a club. The entire group of seniors blinked in confusion. Why you're not joining, any? One asked hesitantly. No, Orion said with a faint smile. Either I won't join any or I'll just make one. All the students became stunned, silently re-evaluating their impression of him. Even Arya blinked in surprise beside him. You're going to form a club? Why not? Orion casually shrugged. None of these feel like they fit me. I'll just make my own space and do things at my own pace. Anyone who wants to follow can join later. Hehe master creating his own faction already. Go go go. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Amelia's eyes flickered faintly in interest. He actually wants to clash with the already established noble factions in the academy on his first day. He really is insane. Or rather, he simply doesn't care about the nobles. With his talent, even the royal family wouldn't amount to much if he reached his full potential. He might be the one whose talent comes closest to that monstrous being. Dawn. Sir Dawn. I wonder where he really came from, Amelia inwardly wondered. No one knows where he came from. One day, he simply appeared, and became the dawn of humanity. He led mankind through its bloodiest wars, claiming one victory after another against the demons. He doesn't belong to any kingdom or empire, right? Yes. He is the unquestioned king of humanity, even the 3 emperors must bow before him. The 2 of them continued chatting as Arya smiled warmly at Orion and said, "Then I'll help. You'll need 3 members to register a club. Count me in." Orion gently smiled, already expecting her response. "Don't you have your own faction to join?" "I was going to join one," she replied, "but this sounds way more fun." He nodded his head and looked over to Amelia. She didn't say a word, but after a second of silence, she quietly stepped forward. "I'll join too," she softly said. Orion raised an eyebrow in surprise. This was probably the first time he had heard her speak, but it was a good opportunity to hear her voice as well. Xianxia the Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He chuckled and nodded his head. "Then I guess the foundation of our club is set." Arya giggled. "Now comes the fun part, naming it." Orion laughed out loud. "That's too early. We first need to think about what we want to do in this club and see if anyone else is interested." Arya nodded her head in understanding. Everyone else had left as they needed to inform their faction about the new club emerging. "Heh. My own club, huh? Let's make it something legendary." "But you don't even have a name for the faction, master." Degree winky face. "I will have one, soon," he smiled and said before the group continued exploring. As the trio continued down the path, the clatter of the club zone faded behind them. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers and scattered leaves drifted toward them. Several students, having overheard Orion's declaration of forming his own club, trailed behind from a distance, whispering among themselves. Rumors were already spreading like wildfire. "That guy, is he really going to make a club with the princess and the Spear Saint's daughter? I heard he has 4 affinities and 8 mana channels. Supreme capacity too. Just yesterday we were worried about noble factions. Now there's a monster making his own. But the question is, will the noble factions allow another faction to exist? The resources are limited, after all. That's not for us to worry about." Amid this chatter, a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade of wind. "Hey! You, Orion Hellstrom." The words echoed across the stone pathway, halting many students in their tracks. The crowd instinctively turned toward the source and saw a lean young man with narrow eyes and silver hair. His uniform was modified slightly, with wind motifs stitched along his sleeves, and his badge clearly marked him as a Tier 1 Awakener. He was flanked by 2 other noble students, both grinning with barely concealed malice. Arya frowned. "Who are these people?" Orion raised an eyebrow, stopping in place as the student walked forward. "Can I help you?" Orion asked calmly, folding his arms. The silver-haired student sneered. "I'm Aaron Winthorn. I represent House Winthorn, a Viscount noble house. And I don't appreciate you walking around acting like you're the king of the academy." Orion blinked. "Huh. Didn't know walking with my friends made me king." Aaron's sneer deepened. "You think you're better than us because of a flashy entrance test? You think you can create your own faction without even proving yourself first?" Why don't we test your strength here and now, like real men? The challenge stirred another wave of excited whispers. A fight? Already? Oh shit, that's Aaron Winthorn. He awakened a few months ago. Wind Affinity, Tier 3. He's already been recruited into a noble society. Arya immediately stepped forward. Are you seriously picking a fight with someone who hasn't even started classes yet? He hasn't even formed his affinity rune. Chapter 100, Duel. Princess, he respectfully bowed. With all due respect, he needs to show some ability if he wants to form his own faction here. And besides, would I dare to challenge that monster if he had formed his rune? I just need to beat him now so I can get the reward from young master and also make a name for myself. He inwardly thought, pleased with himself. Orion thoughtfully looked at Aaron and turned his gaze to Arya and said, "It's fine." Her eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? He's an actual awakener. Wind Affinity gives him incredible speed and movement. It's not the same as sparring. Orion smiled faintly. I know. But I also know myself. Emilia looked at him quietly, then at Aaron. Her grip on her spear tightened slightly, but she didn't speak. Aaron smirked. So you're accepting the challenge? SAR the novel, ir.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion nodded. Lead the way. The students scattered quickly, word spreading like wildfire as the group moved towards the nearest dueling arena, just off the combat practice field. Arya walked beside Orion, biting her lip in worry. I've heard Aaron's pretty fast. Probably one of the best among the new batch of students in terms of fighting. I have a plan, Orion said, tapping 2 fingers against his temple. Arya looked confused. Plan? Orion smiled. You'll see. The arena came into view as a raised circular platform with runes etched all over the place. The entire platform was fortified to handle the shockwave of Awakeners' battles. Dozens of students were already gathering, climbing onto benches or standing at one side to watch the show. The dueling official was a calm-looking instructor with silver-rimmed spectacles as he nodded once. Standard non-lethal duel rules. Physical harm beyond permanent injury is forbidden. First to be forced off the platform, surrender, or lose the ability to fight, loses. Orion looked at the instructor in confusion. First was that teacher in the administrative office and now him. How the fuck do their eyes even go bad that they need glasses? It's a damn magic world for God's sake. Those are special treasures, master. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. First, we need to show that idiot who's the boss here. Aaron jumped onto the platform with dramatic flair, summoning a burst of wind beneath his boots. He grinned, tried to last at least a minute. Orion stepped up, hands behind his back, a relaxed smirk on his lips. The moment his foot touched the platform, a hush fell again. He really accepted it. Arya stared up from the edge of the crowd, heart pounding. Hee, master's gonna wreck him, asterisk. The arena buzzed with tension as Orion stood calmly on one end of the rune-etched dueling platform with a sword tied at his waist that he had just taken out, his back straight, his black hair flowing slightly in the wind. I wonder, where did he get the guts to target me? Doesn't he fear if I was a petty person I would make his life hell after becoming stronger? Orion couldn't help but question inwardly. Master, you overestimate the intelligence of these spoiled nobles. They think their backing can handle it even if the sky is falling. They love to live in their little delusions. Shaking his head, he prepared for the battle ahead. Opposite him, Aaron Winthorn played with a slim rune-inscribed wand with a cocky gaze, as if beating Orion was already guaranteed. Alright, master, don't hold back too much. Let's give these people a little taste of what happens when they poke a dragon, greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. Let's first see what this tier 1 awakener's got, Orion replied mentally. The instructor raised a hand and called out, begin. Immediately, Aaron's body shimmered with a gust of wind, his robes fluttering as he leaped backward and raised his wand. Wind spirits, heed my call, form the blade that cleaves the sky. Gale Cutter. Orion's eyes narrowed. Spell chanting, that's my chance. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, drawing the sword from his side with a swift metallic hiss. It wasn't anything flashy, just the standard sword issued by the Academy. But in Orion's grip, it looked dangerously lethal. The moment Aaron began chanting, Orion charged like a predator lunging for its prey, blade aimed at Aaron's shoulder to disarm him before the spell could finish. Too slow, Aaron muttered, revealing a thin metallic thread looped around his fingers. With a flick, a needle-like dart shot out from his sleeve. Orion's eyes widened just a second before it struck. He twisted his body mid-dash, narrowly dodging the dart, but his approach failed, giving Aaron just enough time to finish his chant. Gale Cutter. A slicing arc of wind exploded forward from Aaron's wand, the air whistling violently as it tore through space like a razor-edged crescent. Orion twisted and dove sideways, the blast missing him by inches, but the shockwave still clipped his shoulders close and sent him sliding across the platform. He landed in a crouch, gritting his teeth. That was close. I nearly dropped out of the platform. Arya watched with her fingers clenched tightly around her robes. That spell, it was clean. Aaron isn't just fast, he's experienced. Well, brother Orion. She trailed off, clearly seeing his lack of battle experience. Master. He's tricky, using cheap shots and distractions. Are you gonna let that little mosquito sting you around like this? I've seen enough, Orion muttered, eyes sharpening as he slowly stood back up. His muscles tensed, his grip on the blade loosened briefly before correcting it. Then, with a soft exhale, he thought inside his mind. I have suppressed myself for long enough. As soon as his words finished, the world around him shifted. Colors dulled. Sounds faded. The only thing he could hear was the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. Then, everything reversed, colors turned vividly vibrant, and he could distinguish every sound, every voice, with crystal clarity. Everything in front of him seemed to slow down for a second. Aaron's body posture, the slight twitch of his shoulders, the flex in his fingers, all became clearer to him. From the audience, everything looked the same, Orion standing still. However, some with keen eyes could notice something had changed about him, yet none could pinpoint what. Even Arya looked toward him in confusion, not understanding what had changed. I'm sensing danger from him. Amelia's spear softly whispered to her. Huh? How is that possible? He hasn't even formed his affinity rune yet. Amelia couldn't believe the absurd words of her spear this time. Something changed. Something changed just now. I can feel it. His aura, it's wild now. As if a monster just got freed from its cage. You better watch out in the future. He might not be as peaceful as he looks. Amelia's grip tightened on her spear, looking at Arya worriedly. Orion, on the other hand, had finally completely released his dragon instinct, freeing his mind from the worry of consciously suppressing it all the time. This feels good. But, he looked at Aaron again, however this time, his eyes held a hint of anger. How dare this bastard challenge me? Master, you need to calm down and focus on what's important for now. He took a deep breath, then he began to walk. Aaron narrowed his eyes. What? You giving up?